Good morning, Aliguma.
Good morning, Aliguma. No one is talking yet. Difficult, you can't do anything else also, like you have to be focused on this. I don't hear you. Yeah,
They have to fix the audio from the
yeah, I
room.
understand. No, because I was writing something and before my meeting and now I can't. Maybe we send yeah, we'll do the part of the. Are you at Ikram, Mohana?
I'm home today.
Okay. Did you hear the classical
Yeah.
music? Okay.
Automatic.
You sent me the no, you didn't send. You sent me the picture. But, yeah. I want the blue. The blue. Oh, I can do with this one. But the for this one with zero, we must have the shaded. I think would be graded. You have blue? Blue?
Hello. Hi Mona, can you hear us now?
Yes, perfect.
उनका वॉइस थोड़ा सा. Mona, would you try speaking again so that we can check the audio?
Yes, Ripple, we can hear you very well now. Do you hear us?
No, we'll have to. Mona, keep on talking. Just need to do an audio check. Sorry about that.
No worries. We can hear you, Ripple. I don't know if you are hearing us.
This session is Net Zero, Heritage for Climate Action. I will not talk about the details of the program or who is doing it, because we have lovely people who have joined us from Rome, from different parts of the world, who would be talking about the entirety of the project. But I will give you a brief introduction of what the session is about. So, in this increasingly complex and interconnected world, understanding and addressing risk at a hyper-local level has become very, very imperative, because we usually talk about risks at a global scale, regional scale, and even at a national scale. But we need to talk about risks at a very hyper-local level. But is that an easy task? Do we look at the contemporary riskscape, or do we go back in the past to understand the process of risk creation? Once we have understood the risk, how do we communicate it? Because that is what our plenary speaker just spoke to us about, that we need to understand the risk and also communicate it. Do we impose interventions, or do we co-create solutions owned by and driven by the community? Do we jump on the bandwagon of technical solutions only, or is there a way to balance the technical and simulated solutions with traditional knowledge, place-based wisdom, and indigenous practices? So that is basically the theme of this session. So the need for this technical session arises from several key challenges in and from the field, and is in line with the theme of traditional risk reduction practices, which favors the voices of communities from the grassroots. This technical session aims to delve into the innovative strategies and methodologies employed in the different sites of the world under a project which is known or called and referred to as the Net Zero project. So it is based on a very simple and a very crucial idea that every place has a climate culture story rooted in years of human-earth interactions, which gives insights into knowledge, traditions, and practices that can support sustainable ways of living and coping with climate extremes. Now, to know more, let's hear from the FAR team, which is being represented virtually by Aparna Tandon and Mona Chakravarti. But before we do that, I would like to introduce to all of you Aparna Tandon. She is the senior program leader at ICROM. She leads the strategic design, partnership development, resource mobilization, as well as implementation of the first aid and resilience for cultural heritage in times of crisis. That is what we call as the FAR program. It is a flagship capacity development initiative of ICROM, which has an expanding alumni network spanning over 100 countries. Aparna has an MA in art conservation, and she specializes in disaster risk reduction and post-conflict recovery of all forms of heritage. She has developed disaster risk management plans for key heritage sites, museums, and archives. Aparna has led post-event damage and risk assessments, as well as in-crisis training to safeguard heritage in over 16 countries affected by disasters and conflicts. In fact, we all know about what is happening in Ukraine. She has been leading most of the work that is being done in Ukraine related to cultural heritage. Over the past decade, Aparna has been working to integrate cultural heritage, safeguard with humanitarian assistance, development planning, and peace building. Within the framework of the FAR program, she is spearheading the research and capacity development on heritage-based climate action through the Net Zero Heritage for Climate Action, which is a 2-year project backed by the Swedish Postcode Foundation. Her work focuses on gathering on the ground evidence of how protecting heritage can help reduce the risk of disasters, adapt to a changing climate, contain emissions, and build sustainable peace. So there's a lot more to go about Aparna, but at this moment, I think it would be very good to pass it on to Aparna. Aparna, are you there?
Yep. Thank you, Ripal. Thank you for that great introduction. Really looking forward to an interaction through this session and learning from all those people who are much more experienced and have gathered here to attend this session, which is about culture and how culture can be an enabler of peace as well as disaster risk reduction. So thank you for that introduction. I would like to briefly explain to all of you the idea of net zero, which is net zero heritage for climate action, but also the programming that is behind this project, or the program, the parent program, which is first aid and resilience for cultural heritage in times of crisis. a flagship capacity development program of ICROM. I would like to share my screen. I have a small presentation to show. So what is ICROM, first of all? ICROM is an intergovernmental organization that was created after the Second World War with the mandate to promote conservation of cultural heritage worldwide after world had seen much destruction. And since then, disaster risk management for cultural heritage is one of the core functions of ICROM. The program that I lead is a capacity development program in a sense. And one of the key challenges that heritage faces today is climate change. Like everyone else, it is the most defining challenge. And we should not forget that our responses as well as our... Is that? So, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Yes. Okay. 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 So I saw some. Okay. So I'll start again. So we should not forget that our perceptions and our attitudes, as well as our responses to most challenges, including disasters and risk drivers like climate change, are shaped by culture. And that's why culture is important. I would like to bring your attention to the moment when disaster strikes. Maybe many of you sitting here have experienced disasters firsthand, and you have seen the death, destructions all around. I too have been in some of these situations, and I want to bring this image from Nepal, where you can clearly see that communities tried to safeguard their cultural heritage with whatever means they have, not because it is inherently valuable. It has value because of it's related to their past, or it has value because it is aesthetically pleasing. Cultural heritage is important to communities because it means a thread of continuity, linking of something from their past, which makes the place that they live in special, and bringing it to their future. It's a process, and often we just dismiss heritage as something like a thing. And this is where we have to move away from the physical, and we have to see what people think as important. Why do they want to give up their lives to safeguard heritage, and how this process helps safeguarding heritage or giving value to something in a place which is physical, helps to create memories, shape memories, create identities, reshape identities, as well as lay claim to resources and secure a future. So in a sense, cultural heritage is who we are and what we want to be. So it is all the more important that culture and heritage are seen as a process, as a socio-cultural process that can be used to as an inclusive process that can be used to reduce risks, as well as that can be used to rally together and fight most defining challenges of our time, such as climate change. Now, one of the problems that we have is that while cultural heritage can be an enabler of peace, there is knowledge embedded in cultural heritage systems, we need to, like everyone else, strengthen its risk reduction, enhance preparedness and response and recovery for heritage. And that's why ICROM's program First Aid and Resilience for Cultural Heritage aims to work with local governments and communities to enhance resilience for cultural heritage from disasters, conflicts, and climate change. We aim to reduce conflict and disaster risk to all types of heritage, build disaster resilient communities, promote sustainable peace, and contribute to climate action. Our motto, "Culture cannot wait," is embedded in the idea that culture is a shared source of identity. It is an enabler of peace. It can also be an enabler of conflict if not handled right. It is a pathway for just climate transition, and it helps build disaster resilience and promote sustainable development. That's why participation, prevention, forecasting, and interagency coordination are some of the key pillars of our programs. We prioritize risk-prone regions, and the services that we offer include international and regional FAR courses. We also do on-demand national and regional courses and trainings. For example, we've held exercises for India, BIMSTEC, and we have also held courses here for on disaster risk management. We undertake multi-hazard disaster risk management plans and help develop for diverse types of heritage, including World Heritage sites, and many of them have been in India also. We offer technical advice during a complex emergency. As Ripal mentioned, we are working actively in areas of conflict as well as disasters. We offer multi-actor national and regional simulations. And who are we? We are a network of climate scientists, conservators, disaster risk reduction specialists like Ripal, librarians, curators, conservation architects, community leaders, and our network spans 122 countries. So it's not just the secretariat at ICROM that makes the program. The program is, in a sense, our network, some of which you will meet with today on this panel. What sets us apart is, as we said, we look at complexity and we look at risks in a local perspective, but we look at all sorts of risk drivers, and we also try to understand how culture is interacting with the root causes of disasters and conflicts in a given place, and risk drivers like climate change, how they are in turn influencing both these interactions as well as how they are impacting cultural heritage. We connect knowledge from diverse sectors and professionals that I have already highlighted, and we also directly work with communities, and our approach is that we have people-led cascading capacity development projects. For example, we not only give training, but after the training we give seed grants, and with those seed grants our participants actually implement some of the key ideas that are given to them in the training on the ground, and that helps us create a positive feedback loop, and it goes into our research and development for developing tools that are helpful. We work with civil protection and many other army and disaster risk management agencies to do risk modeling, risk assessments, as well as in enhancing capacities for response during emergencies, especially in that 0 hour when maximum amount of heritage is damaged due to hasty cleanups and clearance of debris after search and rescue operations. We also, like everyone else, use 3D simulations to do these kind of joint trainings. And of course, a big policy win for us has been that our guidelines for conducting search and rescue at heritage places has been unanimously accepted by OCHA, the Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, as in their technical reference library, and soon we hope this will pave way for more direct and more, let's say, collaborative work, where we'll be able to develop localized coordination mechanisms. One, as Repal highlighted in his introduction, it is very important to understand how risk is perceived in a place, and what are the dimensions or the contributing factors. And it is also very important how communities perceive risk. And we have developed a participatory vulnerability and capacity assessment tool, which also helps governments and local communities to understand how heritage provides resilience, or in which way heritage provides strength to communities, whether through livelihoods or through psychosocial help in a place, and how it contributes to some of the vulnerabilities or inequalities that can be exacerbate, or that can increase our exposure to disasters. So this tool is has been tested in multiple places in many countries. I would encourage all of you to look it up, and if you're interested, we'd be very happy to give you further explanation. We have also produced standardized guidance, which has also has been the basis of an ISO standard, and these are all available in multiple languages, free to download from our website. We provide in-crisis context-specific training to our member states. One of the big problems that we face in our field is that while there is data on loss and damage to, generally there is data on loss and damage for disasters. Well, one would argue not so much, but I'd say the data for loss and damage of cultural heritage is inconsistent, insufficient, and often scattered. And this reduces our understanding of risks to heritage, limits our ability to prevent future damage, and the responses given to cultural heritage are often ad hoc. I would like to ask many of the audience sitting here, how many of you know that how much did India lose in these recent floods that we suffered in Uttarakhand and in Himachal? And there is no clear understanding of what was the damage to cultural heritage. To tackle this, we have developed an online application, a web-based open source, as well as phone-based application. And it is available for our member states, and we have also developed tools and forms which are complying with PDNA and can help governments feed this data directly into rapid needs assessment or PDNAs. And if you again need more information, we'll be happy to provide on this. And we are doing similar work in Ukraine, where we are also helping to build a risk map. In short, our impact has been that in the past 2 years, we have trained more than 300 professionals and mobilized more than 3,000 community members, and enhanced risk management, disaster risk management at more than 189 sites. Many of them are World Heritage sites, and we have reached 122 countries. And now I leave the floor to Mohana, my colleague, who will talk to you about our next initiative, which is the topic of today, Net Zero Heritage for Climate Action. I hope, Repal, I didn't take too much of your time.
No, ma'am.
Sorry
Thank you for your talk. Thank you.
Dear Parna, I will share my screen. So I am Mohana. I am a conservation architect and a project officer working with Aparna at the FARC program of ICRAM. And it's my pleasure today to join you all. And before I even start with the Net Zero project, I just want to remind everyone that in 2021, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, issued a code red for humanity, calling upon governments to limit the global temperature at 1.5 degrees above the pre-industrial times, to avoid irreversible consequences on our planet and the life that it sustains. 2 years later, we saw recently, for a record number of days, where the world already breached that mark, and research shows that it will continue to do so faster than expected. Climate change impacts lives, livelihoods, infrastructure, economy, biodiversity, but it also has a great impact on cultural heritage, both tangible and intangible. Some of the oldest settlements and monuments are at risk of being completely submerged due to the rising sea level, and we will see a case today that we have from Egypt. Migrations caused by climate change often poses great risk of displacing communities at the forefront who holds valuable knowledge about the place. So how do we understand the climate-related risks to heritage? How do we build adaptive pathways for heritage? And what role can heritage play in combating the climate crisis and contributing to the global net zero goal? We believe that every place has a climate culture story, as Ripal was mentioning. These stories are held in the history and knowledge of places, which in turn have been shaped by dwelling environment and generations of human-earth interactions. When this knowledge embedded in heritage is combined with science and technology, it could help the global community to mitigate and adapt to climate change. With that idea in mind, it is my great pleasure today to introduce and present the Net Zero Heritage for Climate Action project, a first of its kind capacity development project that is built upon this idea that I was mentioning, which leverages traditional and indigenous knowledge at 5 innovation sites around the globe to assess and reduce the climate-related risks to disasters and conflicts to heritage, as well as contribute to climate adaptation and decarbonization. The Net Zero project, as mentioned earlier as well, is conceived within the framework of ICRAM's SPAR program with the generous support of the Swedish Postcode Foundation. So the innovation sites that I was mentioning, these sites are based in Brazil, Uganda, Sudan, Egypt, and India. And we are very excited today to present these projects in this panel, and all our speakers are joining from these different countries. So looking forward to that. The Net Zero project was conceived in 4 phases, which were systematic and overlapping. The first phase, which is the situation analysis and data gathering, it engaged all the teams from these 5 sites to collect scientific data and oral histories through a structured questionnaire that looks at the human history of climate change, how the modern climate situation has come to be, what are the social, cultural, technological, economic, intellectual, and philosophical trends that have combined over time to create this present-day climate change situation. And participants were guided also to collect future projections by looking at the IPCC and other climate projection models. So following this data gathering phase, the second phase was an in-person hands-on workshop where all these teams were brought together in Rome. And this workshop was aimed at cross-linking the data that they have gathered in phase 1 across fields and identifying the climate-related risks to heritage and their associated communities. They also built scenarios based on the shared socioeconomic pathways, SSPs of IPCC, and therefore developed, following these scenarios and the risk assessment, they developed culture-based climate action plans that aim to, again, leverage the identified traditional and indigenous knowledge at each site to mitigate the assessed risks as well as help in enhancing carbon sequestration. Participants were also engaged in hands-on simulation exercises to enhance their disaster preparedness. And if you see the pictures here, the participants are actually in a simulation exercise which was developed during the course. And I must mention that this work would not have been possible without the support and the exchange of knowledge that was promoted through this workshop of the cohort of over 25 area specialists who represented over 20 diverse fields, which you see on the screen. The third phase, which is the project implementation phase, and we are very close to completing this phase. This phase was supported by seed grants, where each team field tested their culture-based climate action plans on the ground, drawing concrete evidence that culture has an important role to play in climate action and in building disaster resilience. So I will quickly walk you through our 5 innovation sites, although we will hear more about these projects from the team members themselves. So in Sudan, for example, in the Tuti Island, the team is working to document and disseminate the TAYA system, which is a local early warning and flood mitigation practice, and which is highly currently threatened due to the mass displacement of knowledge bearers in the face of their ongoing conflict. Then we have Ubatuba in Brazil, where the team is working with the Quilombola community to document their knowledge on native crop and plant species, building seed banks using locally available materials and knowledge on food preservation to enhance food security. They're also mapping community held knowledge on safe spaces or highlands during floods, which is then going to be communicated with the civil protection and disaster risk management agencies to strengthen evacuation mechanisms in their area. Our Egypt team is working extensively with farmers, fishermen, and school children as well to raise awareness on climate change, understand their risk perceptions, enhance early warning systems by tapping into the ancient Coptic calendar, as well as planting native sycamore trees and scientifically testing their potential to reduce salinity of fertile soil, which is aggravated by the rising sea level. In Uganda, which is threatened by the rapidly melting glaciers of the Rwenzori Mountains, causing devastating floods, the team is working with the indigenous Bakonzo community to plant native bamboo trees to enhance soil strength and prevent riverbed erosion. They're also engaging neighboring indigenous groups to bring them together in a dialogue to enhance their social cohesion. Finally, our India team, which will again be presented by the team members, so I will not say a lot about it, is working in Jodhpur to study and document the heat mitigation behavior of the vernacular architecture in the city, as well as documenting the water architecture, the water infrastructure that is spread across the city, and raising awareness about these water bodies, the importance of these water bodies, through story circles, dance, music, and theater plays. The fourth and final phase of Net Zero is the International Symposium and an open access publication. We hope to share the insights gained from this project widely through this conference, which is to be held from the 19th to the 23rd of February next year. And we welcome all your participation and partnership. You can also scan the code to register your interest for the conference on the screen. And not only that, but also building on the insights gained from the project, and we have identified several gaps in our field while doing the Net Zero project, and we are collectively developing a climate risk management tool for heritage, which we hope to release very soon next year. So what is next for us? What is next for Net Zero? We wish to upscale this work by offering regional courses in South and Southeast Asia, in the Pacific small island states, as well as other areas in the world, based on this field-tested tool that we are developing, as well as the field-tested training module that we have developed in the Net Zero project. And we wish to create a cohort of professionals of heritage, disaster risk management, development professionals, as well as climate scientists who can help mainstream heritage-based climate action. With that, I welcome your partnership in furthering our efforts and our work, and thank you for your attention. Over to you, Ripal.
Thank you, Aparna. Thank you, Mohana, for that very detailed description of what the FAR program is about, what it does, and how the Net Zero project has been conceived and how it is being rolled out. So without wasting much of a time, because we are at a loss of time, I would like to invite our keynote speaker, Ms. Barbara whom we have already heard, so I do not need to introduce her again, but she is the senior consultant at Craig and McAllister. She is an expert on disaster risk management and cultural heritage. Over to you, Barbara, but you will have to stick to time, please.
I will try to be super brief. Can you switch to the presentation, please? Perfect, thank you. I pass here. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to see you again. We just came from a session of... Sorry? Can you hear me? Here. So I don't need this. This is a good microphone. Thank you so much for pointing. So I had titled this presentation, How Culture Can Be Used. But then I thought that you are going to learn that with our panelists. So I will focus on why. And I will start asking you, if I say cultural heritage, what came to your mind? And maybe for people from India, that could be the first image. Maybe if I ask this question in Mexico, I would have this. And this is one of the problems that we have, is cultural heritage usually is understood like big monuments, big museums, but we know, and we already have learned from a partner, that it's much more. There are tangible, there are intangible, and there are the tangible, movable, tangible, immovable, and intangible. And intangible is one of the most difficult things to understand for disaster risk management specialists. So you will see several examples in the presentation of the team. I wanted to take this because I think it's very illustrative of what intangible is. And this traditional knowledge coming from Japan, that is the Swan song, that basically say if the earth is shaking, go far from the coast because it's possible that a wave is coming to prevent tsunamis. So this is a key important, and we mentioned in the capacity building session before, to go to traditional knowledge and bring it back and work in the present to reduce risk. Connecting with climate change and to specify and to emphasize, a bit why cultural values are so different, I bring an example. One you see is a Roman site in Portugal that date from the 1st to 6th centuries of this era. And the other one is much more recent. It's from the United States, it's Chesapeake Bay, and this is a town that was founded in 1778. So they have the same problem. They has been eroded by the coastal erosion. But the cultural values that they have behind, it's very difficult. It's very different, sorry. On one hand, we had ancient knowledge, a city that was lost many years ago, that is an archaeological site for visitors. On the other hand, we have a community that they have already heritage there, and they came from, they are descendants from this settlement. So it's the same problem, but two different heritage sites. There has been mentioned, okay. Sorry. There has been mentioned as part of the network Net Zero Heritage for Climate Action program, the 5 teams that a partner Mohona presented come together to Italy, and we go to visit the Cinque Terre that was mentioned also in the session before. That is a fantastic example of climate action. I quickly mention it's a site who was created on terrace for agriculture, was abandoned, and now is going to be recovered. They are restoring the dry stone walls to foster resilience and sustainability of the place. And to finalize, it was just mentioned the Inside game, and this is an example that was put in practice together with the community in Cinque Terre and the teams from the 5 countries. So this is to emphasize the role of capacity building and the learning exchange from different teams from different countries, and how this bring a very rich results. Key conclusions, so I'm out. Culture and cultural heritage has different assets and values that we need to keep in mind when we are developing our disaster risk management plans. traditional knowledge, we are lucky that has been listening to this for the last 2 days, emphasizing how it's important go to indigenous knowledge and bringing back together with science. We cannot just rely on the knowledge and the tradition, but we need to combine with the present, no, and the technology. And the culture is key for resilience, climate action, and sustainable development. And one more time, that disasters are not natural, so just to keep in mind. And that's all for my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you for that very brief but presentation, which actually set the tone. Because we are now going to go on a world tour, and we start with Brazil. And I would like to invite Joao Silva, who is a PhD student at the State University of Campinas, and he would be taking us to the Quilombola communities in Ubatuba in Brazil. So, Joao, over to you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, loud and clear.
Okay, let me share my screen.
Joao, one small request, please be in time, 8 to 10 max, 8 to 10 minutes. Perfect, thank you.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, Joao, yes.
Okay, so hello everyone, thank you for the invitation. My name is João. I'm a biologist and archaeologist here in Brazil. I'm representing my team, and I'm going to talk about the study case of Ubatuba, the Quilombo Camburi. So Ubatuba is located in the north coast of São Paulo in Brazil, and the Quilombo Camburi is located in a very rough continent where we have a lot of slopes, for example. And here we have the area of the Quilombo that is divided by a highway. So the area of the Quilombo, our site, talking about the natural and cultural features, there is an abundance of natural resources available, a landscape value that attracts a lot of tourists to the area. It is located inside a protected area of Atlantic rainforest that is one of the most endangered biomes of the planet. It's a reserve of biosphere. And today we have just about 7% of Atlantic rainforest remaining. And the species are very rich in the area for flora and fauna. The Quilombo has a lot of food and genetic diversity, also a traditional agriculture system, the slash and burn system, food conservation techniques and traditional recipes, artisanal fishing, handicraft, and also construction methods. And of course, the cultural features could not be left aside. But all these features, all this heritage is endangered mainly by the risks of urban flood and landslides. And as we can see in the state of São Paulo, where Ubatuba is located, the risk of urban flood and landslide is high for both risks. And things like these images are the examples we can see in Ubatuba and around the region along the year. So we have intense rainfall and mass movement that causes these disasters. And in this other map, we have again the area of the Quilombo. and we can see that there is a high susceptibility to mass movement in the area due to the rain and the and due to the slope. And talking about other features like the highway or the sea level rise, Ubatuba and the Quilombo Camburi are considered as a high risk area. As a result, we have destructions of houses and roads and economic loss. These photos are from July 31 from this year and April 4 also from this year. And we have food insecurity, tourism decrease, temporary isolation, death of communities, loss of agriculture lands, destruction of the environment, and lack of access to public health and education. These images are also from the region. Here I have a little video showing a bridge. This bridge divides the Quilombo, the two main areas of the Quilombo, and when it's raining, the river level rises and it's impossible to cross the bridge, so the Quilombo is divided in two. And what happened is that in 1977, environmental protected area was created where the Quilombo is located, and with this there was a prohibition of traditional practice such as the slash and burn agriculture. With this, there was a gradual decrease in traditional subsistence agriculture practice and also a decrease in fishing as a result of predatory navigation. It resulted in rural exodus, especially of men, and with this, agroforestry backyards, they arose as an alternative, as a rhizomatic counter-hegemony, and also as an autonomy and female protagonism, a reality that is observed in different Quilombola communities throughout the country. As we can see in newspapers, we have the agroforestry backyards transforming the lives of Quilombolas farmers in other regions. Uh, they are forms of resistance and knowledge production. They also feed the community, and in this new we have the pandemic situation covered, and there's a little passage that says that all the women in the Quilombo participate in the practice of planting. The plantations operate in the backyards of houses and in the community's gardens. They produce a lot of things, and they don't plant more because they don't have much space. But with a little space, they plant a little bit of everything. And this backyard are also they are also revealed in papers and dissertation, thesis, books. So these spaces, these backyards, are configured as powerful tools for applying this local ethnobotanical knowledge, aiming not only the food security and climate resilience, but other functions, other social environmental functions, individual and collective. For example, the production and transmission of traditional knowledge and practice, the exchange of floristic and food diversity. It's also a space of belonging and territoriality, aesthetic and landscape value, natural medicine, and a form of resistance. And for this, we aim in three main actions. Those are creation of decentralized seed banks, where we are going to recover a lot of species, native species that were lost throughout time, so they can enrich their backyards. Also enriching it with planting seedlings of native species with fruitful medicinal and forest restoration potential, not only seeds but plant seedlings, and the environmental education actions with the community and schools, as it can be seen in the community, like in the culture festival, where we have some educational practice, seed fair exchange. We have a lot of education actions into the community. And this is the Quilombo, a part of the Quilombo Camburi that is composed for about 200 people and 38 families. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Joao. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. I will request you to stay back in case anyone has a question at the end of this session. Before we move on to the next speaker, and we are traveling world again, so we will go to Egypt this time. But before we do that, I would request all of you to pay attention to two very crucial things here. Joao was actually talking about Brazil, but many of us coming from different parts of the world and different parts of India would want to relate to what is happening in Brazil with our own area. It's a very similar context, but it has very minute contextual differences. So we would want to reflect on that. And second, when we were talking about capacity building in the plenary session, you imagine a capacity building program of this kind where people are actually trying to explore and leverage the power of transdisciplinarity. If you have noticed, Joao is basically a biologist. He's talking about conserving and preserving intangible and tangible cultural heritage in face of climate challenge. So he has to learn climate change, what is happening, and how he can safeguard this. So the power of transdisciplinarity is being exemplified in this particular presentation. So with that, we move on to Egypt, as I said, and I would like to invite Amira Sadiq, who is the executive manager of the Egyptian Heritage Rescue Foundation. Amira ji, over to you. And please be on time. Thank you very much. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, and I am very happy to be present with Net Zero and in this very important gathering. And simply, our Rashid, or our one of the innovation sites which was in Egypt, the project is located in a very particular place, which is the place that you are seeing in on the map, on this red circle, the place where the Nile is gathering with the Mediterranean Sea. Of course, we are talking about climate change, and we are talking about heritage and peace together, which is the main core of of the Net Zero program. In this place, we have a very roots of tradition related to a place where you have a different kind of culture, agriculture culture, a culture related to the sea with the fishermen, even a culture related to the architectural culture, a place which was inhabited since more than 4,000 years till now. So we have to think about how heritage is very rich here, with the heritage coming from a tangible heritage, like coming from the kind of architecture which respect the which respect the atmosphere of the place, and also with a very ancient Egyptian flora that's coming from an agriculture civilization. And when we are talking, like Mohonaji was talking in the first phase of this project related to how we gathered the information and the desk work there, we have worked on the ancient archives. We have working related to the ancient civilization, and how this place, which was called also the 2 million palm place, was very important. Was since the old time, the kind of plantation that was there, it was really a very good plantation, and related to mitigate and to overcome the climate change since 4,000 years ago. So this kind of plantation of palm was a very good wall in natural wall in preventing the desertification and at the same time another flora related to the kind of agriculture which was the kind of harvest that we have there was very good also for preventing the salinization of the land. This brought us to what we are facing today. We are facing today a very high salinization of the land with a scarcity of water, which caused about losing like 25% of the agricultural land, and even with a, if we are talking also after what we, the third phase, the second phase, which was the field work on Rosetta itself. When we went there, also besides the salinization, we have like a very poor drainage system, which making with the rising of the sea level and with the drought that we have and with the rising of the temperatures that you can see also the projection on the IPCC and on the integrated coastal zone management in the northern coast of Egypt system. The losing of land due to the salinization is coming over 25%. The losing of land due to erosion is coming to 50%, and this was like the root causes behind that. This place was the high ratio, the place where we have the most of illicit immigration coming from Egypt toward to Italy and to other countries, because the young generation from we are talking from 18 till even 5 years old. Most of them are looking to how to migrate by this kind of illicit trafficking there, and to get like good opportunity out of our homeland. And at the same time, a lot of tradition are being lost, tradition related to what are the ancient Egyptian calendar of agriculture, or how we are maintaining the fishing system, especially with a kind of fishing net, which are very suitable to the kind of fishes that we have there, the migrating fishes that are coming especially in special time to the mouth of Rashid, the mouth between the water, the Nile water and the Mediterranean water, to put their eggs there. And this is because of the climate change. A lot of these whales has been lost. We have maintained here with the community in the field phase. We have maintained with them a lot of activity for the children, for the youth, and even for the families there. We have to say that even when we wrote our recent statement, we was talking about 7,000 people, but now we are talking really on the ground with about 15,000 people. Most of them are working in the three main craft or the three main activities, which are fishing, farming, and other handicraft. And each one of them is working the three activities together. At the same time, one of the main hazard who is coming also is the pollution coming from the petroleum company. And in the same time, the young generation want to change their activity from fishermen, from farming, to be like chemical engineering or petroleum engineering, which also when we have used the participatory games by ICROM, like the Inside Games, and we have even making it like a dream map for them, for the children. Some of these statics have came, which means that we need a lot of awareness there and a lot of changing the mind, the set mind of the community. Not changing the set mind, but just bring them a little bit a step back and a step forward. I have to say that one of the amazing things there was when we work with the community, that already they have making a kind of mitigation plan for what they have seen during the or the last decade, during to the draft of their land, and even they have making a innovation of how they can do a craft which can be like another source for enriching the livelihood of the land there, but only like you see that the old generation who have this traditional knowledge. And a part of this project was not only to document, but to bring the new generation and to be like a bridge of between a bridge between the young generation and the old one. And this has been coming by a very heritage solution, which was a kind of the sycamore tree, which is a very old and traditional tree coming from the ancient Egyptian civilization, and even it is related to the women who are really one of the main pillar of this civilization. And we have, first of all, the plantation, or this old plantation of sycamore have disappeared due to some intangible heritage related, for example, that we need that this old tree who can go for 5,000 years and 1,000 years can take off the age of the one who planted it. And this was one of the stories there. So we make with the whole communities more than one activity till we planted about till now 40 trees in this small village. One of the experiments that we will do is to see if really this kind of ancient trees can reduce the salinization of the land, and also other things that we will do with the fishermen there. It's an early warning system related to this early warning system will be a kind of application on the mobile phones. All of them, they have a kind of mobile phone, but it will be visual application a little bit to be easy to be understand from them.
Amiraji, can we request you to kindly wrap up in a minute or two?
Yes, I finished my presentation. Okay. And this is all. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Amiraji. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. Before we move on to the next presentation, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that we keep on talking about cascading risks and complex risks. We just visited a place which has complex risks. It is talking about sea level rise. It is talking about drought conditions. It is talking about saltwater intrusion and whatnot. And another important thing, while we talk about the hazard profile of the place, we are also keen and considering the vulnerability profile where the young people are leaving that place. So you see there is no intergenerational dialogue, there is no intergenerational transfer of knowledge. So that is also a big problem. Any which way, the team is doing their best and we hope they do a good work there. And now we move on to the next team, and it is very close to Egypt. It is in Africa, and we invite Ezra, who is the project manager of the Sudan Urban Development Think Tank. Ezra, over to you.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Can you hear me well, Ripple?
Yes, yes. Just requesting you to kindly keep in time. 8 minutes max, please. We are running out of time. I'm so sorry. Over to you, Ezra. Ezra, you are on mute. You are on mute. We still can't hear you, Ezra. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, I would
Perfect.
like to share my screen. Hello, everyone. First, let me introduce myself. I'm Isra Al-Ghadi. I am from Sudan and representing now Sudan team. And we are working on a site that is called Tuti Island. Tuti Island is a place in the confluence of the Nile. And it's a very unique island, one of the old habitats and human settlements in Khartoum. And actually, it's the seed that created Khartoum as we know it right now. It's in the confluence of the Blue Nile, which comes from Lake Tana in Ethiopia, and the White Nile, which comes from Lake Victoria, from Kenya and Uganda. So in this very unique place where these two Niles to create the great Nile, River Nile in Africa, we have Tuti Island. Tuti Island is one of the old settlements, and it has its own history and diversity in ethnic groups and agricultural practice. It's based on agriculture from tribes called Al Mahas, who came from North Sudan and settled here, and then started on working on agriculture and teaching Quranic studies and teachings in Khartoum. So basically, the start of Khartoum was in Tuti. This island has been facing a lot of incidents and events, basically flood events. So basically, the risk that this island inhabitants face each year is the flooding. So basically, they are experts, and they grew this traditional practices in dealing with floods. Which it's the heritage that we studied throughout the past year under the Net Zero program. So why we chose this island? First of all, it was
Isra, sorry to interrupt you. Your
island for so many years. So only the way to be reached to is by boats until 28 when there was a bridge constructed between Khartoum and this island. So it's like a rural.
Isra, sorry to interrupt you. Your slides are not changing. If you can please look at that.
Really?
Yeah.
How about that? Is it now changing?
No. Maybe you should stop sharing and reshare again, because it's just stuck on one slide.
Okay. Now, can you see it?
Yes, we can see your slides, and yeah.
Is it changing?
No, it's still not changing. It's still not changing. You
Okay,
can go to the full
I
screen
will-
mode and then try.
Yes, maybe like this, I guess it's better.
Yeah, this way also works. Yeah.
Okay, sorry about this. So basically, this island, they have history in dealing with floods, and it's like a rural area within a larger urban area. So they kept a lot of intangible and tangible heritage in there, and we are focusing only in one heritage, which is the Thai practice. To deal with floods. So we like focusing in one of the main aspects of intangible heritage in Tuti Island. But by referring to a lot of archaeologists and historians, there are a lot of intangible heritages in Tuti that needs documentation and studying more. So this heritage that we are focusing on is called the Taya system, but I will come to explain it later. Why we focusing on this practice in dealing with floods? Because it's happening every year, and every year, the Nile flooding in Sudan is like an event, and a national event that happens throughout the country. And during the flood season, it's like we have only just focusing on floods and settlements and like that, and the affected areas. And the Tuti island inhabitants, they just take the lead and always making a role model in dealing with this by using their heritage. But addressing the climate change issue, and this phenomena affecting a lot of places, is Sudan is not far away from that. So relying on the projections and studies from climate climate observation institutes, and the UN, and World Bank, and every interested institution in this aspect, it shows that the frequency of floods and the severity of it are going to increase due to this phenomena. And also the people of Tuti and other places in Sudan, they will be affected also by this. And in Sudan, it has been observed that the pattern of flooding and the severity, and there are other changes like deforestation in some places, droughts in some places, heavy precipitation in some places, are changing, and it's not like what they have were accustomed to. So we asked our question. Well, we know that people in Tuti, they deal with flood, but are they going to be able to deal with this changing pattern of floods and even other hazards in the future that are happening or are going to happen due to climate change? So our main question was, in studying the Taya system, was, is it going to be resilient to deal with other hazards? And how we can implement any kind of intervention so to make it more sustainable and to empower the community more, and make out of it a model that can be replicated to other communities that could be endangered. So we have spent after analyzing the risks that are imposed to Tuti Island and the Taya system, and the knowledge that is held within the inhabitants, we came to study the Taya more and analyze it more. And the most important part of this was to preserve first this knowledge after a slight deviation that happened into our project. We are just want to tell the audience that our project became a little bit different from the other sites because a war broke in Sudan, and Tuti Island is in the middle of the battlefield between the two conflicting sides. So basically they are now, and the island is now, as we speak, is in complete isolation. So our continuation of the project was more of analyzing and documenting the knowledge and this heritage more than implementing on the site. But luckily we were supported by all those students who managed to flee the war, and we became in tight connection with them. So they provided us with all knowledge and documentation and stories of them, and supported even in analyzing the Thai system. So what is this Thai system? The Thai system, as we call it, is an urban resilience methodology, or a system to deal with flood. And it was officially documented. It was there before 1946, but it was officially documented at that time. Ataya is basically a tent to observe the Nile. Because whenever the Nile level rises, so they keep this watch point or observation point around the island, and each observation point has a scope, so has a parameter that is connected with the other one. So it's like a ring around the island of observation points. The purpose of these observation points is to observe the Nile and to forecast and
Isra,
also
sorry to interrupt you. Can you please wrap it up now in a minute or two, please? I'm so sorry.
Okay, yeah, I know. So basically, these observation points called TIAs, they work in a systematic way and supported by community solidarity concept called NAFIR. So whenever there is a danger happens and the Nile rises, they have their traditional way of warning the community for evacuation, also to respond to the floods, and also the barricading. I would like to just, before adding this, we have done analysis to this system and how it works, how we decomposed it, and how it works through the different times through the year, and dealing with the flood crisis, and also how it can be aligned with the disaster risk reduction phases, and how it can be disaggregated into steps so other people can replicate it. And the result of this study was a document that includes lessons from the Taya, including steps, guidance, stories from the Taya, and also the lessons learned from this project that we took from the workshop that we took from in Rome and the other sites. And we are in continuous work of this. Also, the last thing is now we know that Taya is working for dealing with this conflict, and they are these points are not only observing and dealing with the floods, they are now dealing with the conflict, providing food, supplies, and even clean water to the inhabitants who are stranded now in Tuti Island. There are other knowledges associated to this, like weather forecasting, like Nile observation, like even agricultural practice that are related to this, but also it is something to be studied and analyzed, and it can be put in a comprehensive model to deal with the climate change and hazards that resulted from that. Thank you, Ripol, and thank you everyone for this opportunity, and good luck.
Thank you, Isra, for that wonderful presentation. Before we move on to the next presentation, let me highlight two very important things. We often understand early warning system as to be very, very technology driven, but here we are talking about an early warning system, the TIE system, which is not anything which is near to technology. It's completely human driven. That's one thing. And the second thing is that we are talking about disaster risk reduction in a context which is strife with conflict. So all hats off to you, Isra, for pulling this off, and thank you for taking time out for this presentation. We'll move on to the next presentation, and that is from Uganda. I would like to invite Ali Guma, who is from the Cross Cultural Foundation of Uganda. Ali Guma, the stage is yours, but please, please, please be in time. We are running out of time. I'm so sorry, but please be in time. Over to you, Ali Guma.
Okay, thank you, Paul, and thanks to Paul, and thanks to the team that has organized this, and thanks for our colleagues from ICROM. My name is Ali Guma Haviona, and I work for the Cross Culture Foundation of Uganda, like Paul has just introduced me. I'll talk about Ekisara Chakororo sacred site around Rwenzori Mountains National Park. So Rwenzori Mountains, the site itself is in Uganda, and Uganda is in Africa. I've just put the maps there, just in case anyone is wondering where the presentation is being made from or where the site is. And the site is around Rwenzori Mountains National Park. You can see the location there, and that's the photo of the Ekisara Chakororo site. So about the site briefly, the site is a waterfall located at the confluence of the Kaviri and the Kitengesa rivers in Chondo sub-county in Kasese district. The two rivers flow from the top of the Rwenzori Mountains, and the mountains, of course, is a World Heritage Site known for its natural and cultural values. In Kasese, the communities there that are mostly the Bakonzo and other communities like the Basongora, Banyabindi, treasure the site or even most of the waterfalls as places for ritual cleansing, healing, and traditional justice dispensation. And that's why the site was chosen as one where we could explore some work, interrelatedness of heritage and climate action. And in terms of the risks of the site, generally, the site is at the foothills of Rwenzori Mountains, and according to the study of the Royal Geographical Society, like you might see on your screen, the glaciers on the mountains are receding, and this is creating a lot of floods and landslides due to the melting. You can see just in a space of 2 years, from June 2003 to June 2005, there was a significant part of course, the implication is that this water flows into the many streams in the mountains, and that's one of the streams is River Kaviri, hence creating floods, bursting river banks, and of course the other issue here, the risk is knowledge bearers are being lost. A lot of cultural properties around Rwenzori Mountains, of course, are being affected. But also one peculiar aspect, a risk in this area is the inter-ethnic conflicts. There are many, well, not many, but the main community is the Bakonzo, and there are like 3 other ethnic communities that use River Kaviri as a resource. River Kaviri is where the Ekisara Chakororo site mostly is, though it is at the confluence. So there are the Bakonzo upstream where the site is, but also downstream where the other ethnic minorities are. So there's a lot of interrelationship that whatever is happening around the site upstream affects the other communities downstream that are mostly involved in agriculture. So some of the risks here in the area are around, this shows some of the floods, of course, on the rivers Tengesa, in Kilembe, in Kasese. And what we've gathered so far about the site and the knowledge is documented in this short book, which you can find on our website at crossculturefoundation.or.ug. So there's a lot of foretelling by a god called Nyabingi or Omgore. She used to predict bad weather conditions or long droughts and warn people to keep enough food in granaries. And the Wakonzo mostly still believe in this god. So this knowledge has been documented. They are ridge leaders. The mountain Rwenzori has many ridges, and each ridge has a leader. A leader traditionally passed on from their ancestors. So the ridge leaders have a responsibility of taking care of their heritage in each ridge. And this has not been so much used by our government here, but we think this leadership can provide key interventions if we are planning for any climate action or mitigation. Their prophets are predicting calamities and trying to work with other spiritualists in the region to avert some of these. The endemic birds, if you read this publication, you would find some of the birds, the local bird called HPP, endemic really to the area, and a lot of indigenous trees and their associated taboos. So we've tried to document this knowledge that can help to, in a way, contribute to safeguarding these sites from the risk of climate change. So we've tried to plant indigenous trees along the river banks to try to strengthen the river banks in case there's a lot of water coming from the mountains and flowing downstream. You can see a young man with an elder planting bamboo and other trees that have also been planted in the area. The trees were selected from the focus group discussions that we had with communities, trying to highlight what trees have been here for the last generation and how were the riverbanks protected from any incidences of climate change. So we've also worked with young people, like you might see here, the relationship, but also promoting intergenerational dialogue, interethnic kind of action, because the people who are downstream, the Basongora and the Banyavina and the others, have not had many spaces to interact about River Kaviri and the site. So the site has given an opportunity for these communities to interact and provide some kind of targeted intervention. And of course, mainstreaming early warning systems in modern systems. So we've held events where we've had the cultural leaders interacting with scientists, trying to see, because the cultural leaders or elders in the area say that when the water in any way changes color from the mountains, then there is likely to be a disaster. But also when birds start moving from up the mountains to the lower areas, there's likely to be floods. So most of the scientists have not tried to put, or our government has really not tried to put early warning systems that can try to help here. So it's the traditional system that's trying to help. So as part of the project, the River Kaviri Valley Committee was formed to try to incorporate aspects of indigenous knowledge in this climate action. And this is one of the events we had when we were launching that book that I just showed you. And you can see a member of the Red Cross. These normally come when disasters strike. But in these kind of engagements, they are offering their knowledge. We have cultural leaders. The person speaking there is the person heading the District Natural Resource Department in Kasese, trying to share ideas on where the interconnectivity is between heritage and climate action. I thank you for listening to me, and you are free to get more information about the Exara Chakoro Culture Site from our website, www.crossculturefoundation.or.uk. And we're also a member of the Climate Heritage Network, where we share ideas about heritage and climate action. We thank ICROM, of course, for providing this opportunity. I thank you, Ripo.
Thank you, Aliguman. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. What I particularly like about this is that they are using traditional knowledge and they are using the young people to kind of implement that knowledge. So that's great. Aliguman, requesting you to kindly stay back. If anyone has any question, we will take them up at the end of the session. Finally, we come back to our home country, we come to India, and I would like to invite Shriparna to the dais for a round of interview actually, so to break the monotony of just looking at the screen and listening to presentations. We'll do a little bit of change. I will ask Shriparna, who is the co-founder of Grid Corps, the implementing agency of Net Zero project in India, a couple of questions, and I believe that would cover all of the aspects that is required, and that would also save us a little bit of time, right? So thank you, Shriparna, for joining us. The first question is that you have been working in Jodhpur for quite a lot of time, right? So what is the perception of the community in Jodhpur about climate change? And when I mean community, I actually do not mean the elite class, but people who are at the forefront of climate change, for example, auto drivers, for example, vendors. So what would be your answer to that?
When you're talking about climate change, obviously if you're talking about the community, one thing that is for sure, they do not understand climate change in terms of numbers, statistics or data, but they are at the forefront of experiencing it, experiencing the impact of climate change. And when we talk about climate change, one thing that comes to our mind immediately would be the rising temperature, which is a very big concern for every one of us. But one thing that is less considerate about, I'll not say it's not considerated, but it's less considerated about is rising humidity, which is a very persistent fact in Jodhpur. And for the local community of Jodhpur, they're okay with the temperature rising, they can deal with it. But one thing that they have very consistently said in all our interactions with the community is that it's the humidity, it's the rising humidity that is causing the effect for them, and which in turn is actually affecting their health and their day-to-day activities. The other thing that the community is now realizing is the abnormal seasonal changes that they have and the high amount of erratic rainfall. That is one thing that is there. And one thing that we had realized when we were in the field working with the community, talking to the community, is that just writing an article about it or publishing a document about it is not going to suffice and not justify the problem that they are sharing with us. So we had documented it. We have created a documentary called Sanchay, which is also available in YouTube, and which says, which captures the riskscape of Jodhpur and also says the past, present and a possible future of the place. It's a documentary which we believe that the viewers might be inspired towards a risk reduction part.
Thank you. So since you have a lot of experience of working, what seems to be the problem? What seems to be the gap? And in terms of doing something in Jodhpur, what have you done?
When we talk about the gap, one thing that is very persistent there and which is there in abundance is the traditional knowledge. But when we are talking about the gap, it is the intergenerational dialogue and the transfer of that knowledge from the older to the younger generation that is missing. That is one very big gap which we came to know about when we talk to the older generation. They have a lot of solutions and very homemade remedies that we talk about to deal with the rising temperature, rising humidity and all the problems that is persistent there. But when we talk about the younger generation, they are more into the technology part of it. I have the AC, I have the cooler, so it's better to just turn it on and my problem is solved. So that is the transfer of knowledge that needs to be there is the gap. And when we are talking about what we have done in terms of our work, firstly that I would like to say is we have partnered with NRDC India, and we have been able to include cultural knowledge in the heat action plan of Jodhpur. And that is, I think it would not be wrong to mention that it is one of its kind here in India, that we have cultural knowledge being, or traditional knowledge being a part of a policy document.
Perfect, thank you. Last question, which is a more interesting one, is that we usually refer to Jodhpur as the blue city, but it appears that in your study, in your work, blue city is a misnomer, because you do not say Jodhpur is blue city because of the blue buildings, but because of its amazing and its intricate network of water bodies. So what is the importance of these water bodies in the life? What are the problems, and have you done anything around it?
Right. So first thing that I would like to say is, and correct your statement basically, is the water bodies are not important, they used to be important. So when we talk about the water bodies and why they were important is because they were the only source of water for Jodhpur since Jodhpur was established. And why am I talking about it in past tense is because people of Jodhpur right now, they have lost that sense of ownership and they have completely detached themselves from that culture or the heritage of their intricate water bodies. There's only one water body that I would like to mention about is Ranisar, which is maintained by the Mehrangarh Fort, the royal family, which is under the royal family, and that is the only source of water for the entire of the fort, entirety of the fort, that is still being used. Other than that, all the other thousands of water bodies which were present is in very poor condition. It's very sad when you go and see that people are not aware that there is a step well or there is a lake or there is a reservoir or a bauri, how we talk about it in Jodhpur, that is there. It has every kind of garbage in it. People are not aware of it, especially the young kids. They do not know that they have a water body right next to their school or their house.
So have you guys done anything?
Yes, when we were there, we had a lot of conversations with a lot of esteemed people who told us about the histories of it and the cultural heritage and the knowledge and the emotions behind building those water bodies. So one thing that we had done is we had collaborated with 3 to 4 schools, and we had worked with 27 to 30 kids of those schools, and we had imparted them with the knowledge of the history, the cultural knowledge, and not only that, we had given them the cultural knowledge with the backing of scientific evaluations and scientific facts with it. And very amazingly, what we came up with is all the 27 kids, they came up with a theatrical performance for round about 150 to 200 people, including the teachers, faculty, audiences, and the members, representative members of the royal family and the trust, museum trust. So they had performed a theatrical performance where they also included their own dialogue, their songs and their dances, everything. But one thing that came out very loudly as a message from the kids towards all the older generation or the people there present is that they do not like how the things are going ahead. They do not like the path that they are set it for. They very clearly mentioned as the ending of their entire performance was that they want a very resilient and a sustainable future for their future as well. They do not want to be going down a different path right now.
Well, thank you. I will not ask any more questions because I do not want to drag this. Thank you, Shuparna. Now the floor is open for questions, and any of the teams, any of the members, online, offline. I will not stop you from having your tea, so quickly, let's say around 5 minutes, if any one of you have any questions. To anyone? Yeah, okay.
So, thank you. My name is Amit Tandon. I come from National Disaster Management Authority. So it's a very interesting concept of how net zero buildings and climate and heritage becomes a very important driver for mitigating climate change, etc. But that's a larger question with the group. When we look at traditional knowledge, there are two challenges. One is definitely these traditional knowledge comes with a hierarchy and biases of caste, class and gender. Many times when we look into and reinforce cultural knowledge and traditional knowledge, inherently we end up reinforcing these systems in place. Some of the systems what we saw over there in the presentation also replicated that. So how does we as professionals are being mindful, and I would love to know from you guys, how are we being mindful to address these kind of challenges? And probably you might be facing that within your work, that there are these existing, definitely caste in India, gender across the globe. How are we addressing these aspects while integrating, while reinforcing traditional knowledge systems? Secondly, what ma'am was telling about uh, water systems and people, there is a knowledge transfer is missing. So what, and there are, I would like to quote a case of Kul systems in Himachal Pradesh. When we look at the knowledge transfer, what are we doing as professionals within the governance system, governing systems as well as in institutions to institutionalize these knowledge? Now, are they interesting mechanism to be done which actually documents it, shares it, and also look at the larger legal framework? Because why I'm saying Kul as a system, because Kul irrigation system, though it was a traditional irrigation system, it has a Rivaze Apache, which was a customary right. That right was about water sharing. And probably in year 2004, when some of the landowners were not giving water, people used those customary right to fight a high court case. And that's how, when we institutionalize knowledge systems, then probably it makes sense also to reinforce over there. So two questions from you guys. One is, how are we addressing these gaps? And then how are we looking at institutionalizing this thing? Anyone can answer, yeah.
I think Aparna would like to take this one maybe because...
Yeah, I can, and I would ask others to join me. Thank you, Amit, and it's always wonderful to see you, and hope to work with you more. I think the question that you ask is very relevant, and it's a question that we ask ourselves constantly. But one aspect I would like to highlight is that what Amira said, and it's very evident in our Egyptian case study, where she has been engaging actors from Haya Karima, which is a government scheme, as well as making the villagers come together and talk. So when people are talking and when you are making sure that this is not something us versus them, or the divisions are not they're so pronounced, and these are more dialogues which are on even footing, where no one is making value judgments on another, then communities that are very steeped in tradition or hierarchy are very willing to take a look at what has gone wrong, and are willing to change, provided there is confidence building on the other side, provided their opinions and their ideas are taken into consideration and are not just captured in reports and left there. And if the villagers are saying, build me a road now, then there should be some action on that. The defense mechanisms come up, or people tend to stick to their let's say to their defenses, or they become defensive about their systems when there is no recourse for them, and they are left to then they want to keep on to themselves. And I would like Aliguma and Amira to talk about this, because this is something Aliguma also said, that leadership in Uganda of these leaders, ridges, because the problem started when Rwenzori Mountain was declared as a national park, and people were thrown out of the park, the forest dwellers, and the same happened in Ubatuba. People were thrown out of these parks, and they were put on mountain slopes to subsist on those mountain slopes, very dangerous places to exist. And then after that, they've had subsequent rebellions, and there have been some core issues about power sharing which have not been addressed. So this is not a matter of only institutionalizing. I think this is a matter of power sharing, resource sharing, as well as joint governance, participatory governance, rather than just a simple knowledge exchange. I hope I've answered your question. Amira Aliguma, if you want to comment.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. We would like to take this discussion forward, but I think we can take this up in the tea sessions because we are running out of time and we have another session also. So I will take this moment to thank everyone, actually those who have joined us from different parts of the world. Aparna ma'am, Mohana, Ikrom, without your support this would not have been possible. So thank you very much. Thank you all the panelists, all the presenters, and thank you for the audience for staying back and listening to all the knowledge that these people had to share with us. And just to follow it up, we have another session in which we will be talking about heat action plans, heat, and of course, traditional knowledge in heat action plans. But that would be after a small tea break, coffee break, whichever you prefer. So thank you everyone, and thank you everyone joining online. Thank you. Okay. I might not have all the presentations right now, so
this one is like extremely relevant to our case study. The first one. The first person.
The first person is this here. One online. Oh, Joao. Yes. Okay.
गौरवशाली राष्ट्र के निर्माण व विश्व कल्याण के लिए प्रतिबद्ध माननीय प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी को धन्यवाद और उत्तराखंड के युवा दूरदर्शी मुख्यमंत्री श्री पुष्कर सिंह धामी को शुभकामनाएं।
आइए और 6th वर्ल्ड कांग्रेस ऑन डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट में सम्मिलित हों और आपदा प्रबंधन में भागीदार बने।
साथ सोचेंगे, साथ लड़ेंगे। वसुधैव कुटुंबकम हजारों वर्षों से भारतीय मनीषा का मूल मंत्र रहा है। एक मंत्र जो पूरे विश्व के लोगों को एक परिवार बनाता। इस समय हमारा विश्व परिवार क्लाइमेट चेंज और ग्लोबल वार्मिंग से होने वाली समस्याओं और आपदाओं से घिरा हुआ है। इस विषय पर चिंतन करने और समाधान ढूंढने के लिए महान हिमालय की धरती उत्तराखंड के देहरादून में इस वर्ष 28 नवंबर से 1 दिसंबर तक 6th वर्ल्ड कांग्रेस ऑफ डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट का आयोजन किया जा रहा है। गौरवशाली राष्ट्र के निर्माण व विश्व कल्याण के लिए प्रतिबद्ध माननीय प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी को धन्यवाद और उत्तराखंड के युवा दूरदर्शी मुख्यमंत्री श्री पुष्कर सिंह धामी को शुभकामनाएं। साथ सोचेंगे, साथ लड़ेंगे और साथ जीतेंगे। धन्यवाद। वसुधैव कुटुंबकम हजारों वर्षों से भारतीय मनीषा का मूल मंत्र रहा है। एक मंत्र जो पूरे विश्व के लोगों को एक परिवार बनाता। इस समय हमारा विश्व परिवार क्लाइमेट चेंज और ग्लोबल वार्मिंग से होने वाली समस्याओं और आपदाओं से घिरा हुआ है। इस विषय पर चिंतन करने और समाधान ढूंढने के लिए महान हिमालय की धरती उत्तराखंड के देहरादून में इस वर्ष 28 नवंबर से 1 दिसंबर तक 6th वर्ल्ड कांग्रेस ऑफ डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट का आयोजन किया जा रहा है। गौरवशाली राष्ट्र के निर्माण और विश्व कल्याण के लिए प्रतिबद्ध माननीय प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी को धन्यवाद और उत्तराखंड के युवा दूरदर्शी मुख्यमंत्री श्री पुष्कर सिंह धामी को शुभकामनाएं। साथ सोचेंगे, साथ लड़ेंगे और साथ जीतेंगे। धन्यवाद।
जय हिंद। प्राकृतिक आपदाएं हमेशा से ही पूरे विश्व और मानवता के लिए एक चुनौती रही है, जिसके प्रबंधन एवं समाधान पर मंथन एवं चिंतन करना जरूरी है। उत्तराखंड ने कई बार प्राकृतिक आपदाओं का सामना किया है और हमारे बेहतर प्रबंधन और सामूहिक प्रयासों से हमने हमेशा ही अपने राज्य को इससे उभारा है। इन्हीं प्राकृतिक आपदाओं के बेहतर प्रबंधन और नए प्रयासों पर मंथन करने के लिए 28 नवंबर से 1 दिसंबर 2023 तक 6th वर्ल्ड कांग्रेस ऑन डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट का आयोजन देहरादून में किया जा रहा है, जिसमें दुनिया भर के वैज्ञानिक और चिंतक आकर अपने विचार रखेंगे। इस सम्मेलन का आयोजन न सिर्फ आपदा प्रबंधन के क्षेत्र में मील का पत्थर साबित होगा, बल्कि उत्तराखंड में आयोजित होने जा रहे ग्लोबल इन्वेस्टर समिट 2023 में आ रहे दुनिया भर के इन्वेस्टर्स के बीच सेफ इन्वेस्टमेंट, रेजिलिएंट उत्तराखंड की इमेज को भी मजबूत करेगा। मैं आप सभी को आमंत्रित करता हूं कि आप उत्तराखंड में आएं और 6th वर्ल्ड कांग्रेस ऑन डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट का हिस्सा बने। जय हिंद।
आदिकाल से उत्तराखंड की धरती विश्व को सही मार्ग दिखाती आ रही। कभी ऋषि मुनियों के ज्ञान से, कभी योग के प्रकाश से और कभी धर्म के विचार से। आज पूरा विश्व जलवायु परिवर्तन और ग्लोबल वार्मिंग से होने वाली आपदाओं से जूझ रहा है। तो उनसे लड़ने के सही मार्ग को खोजने के लिए उत्तराखंड सरकार 6th वर्ल्ड कांग्रेस ऑफ डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट का आयोजन कर रही है। आखिर आपदा से जूझना और उससे जीतना हमसे बेहतर कौन जानता है। नमस्कार, धन्यवाद। आदिकाल से उत्तराखंड की धरती विश्व को सही मार्ग दिखाती आ रही। कभी ऋषि मुनियों के ज्ञान से, कभी योग के प्रकाश से और कभी धर्म के विचार से। आज पूरा विश्व जलवायु परिवर्तन और ग्लोबल वार्मिंग से होने वाली आपदाओं से जूझ रहा है। तो उनसे लड़ने के सही मार्ग को खोजने के लिए उत्तराखंड सरकार 6th वर्ल्ड कांग्रेस ऑफ डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट का आयोजन कर रही है। आखिर आपदा से जूझना और उससे जीतना हमसे बेहतर कौन जानता है। नमस्कार, धन्यवाद। आदिकाल से उत्तराखंड की धरती विश्व को सही मार्ग दिखाती आ रही। कभी ऋषि मुनियों के ज्ञान से, कभी योग के प्रकाश से और कभी धर्म के विचार से। आज पूरा विश्व जलवायु परिवर्तन और ग्लोबल वार्मिंग से होने वाली आपदाओं से जूझ रहा है। तो उनसे लड़ने के सही मार्ग को खोजने के लिए उत्तराखंड सरकार 6th वर्ल्ड कांग्रेस ऑफ डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट का आयोजन कर रही है। आखिर आपदा से जूझना और उससे जीतना हमसे बेहतर कौन जानता है। नमस्कार, धन्यवाद। आदिकाल से उत्तराखंड की धरती विश्व को सही मार्ग दिखाती आ रही। कभी ऋषि मुनियों के ज्ञान से, कभी योग के प्रकाश से और कभी धर्म के विचार से। आज पूरा विश्व जलवायु परिवर्तन और ग्लोबल वार्मिंग से होने वाली आपदाओं से जूझ रहा है। तो उनसे लड़ने के सही मार्ग को खोजने के लिए उत्तराखंड सरकार 6th वर्ल्ड कांग्रेस ऑफ डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट का आयोजन कर रही है। आखिर आपदा से जूझना और उससे जीतना हमसे बेहतर कौन जानता है। नमस्कार, धन्यवाद। आदिकाल से उत्तराखंड की धरती विश्व को सही मार्ग दिखाती आ रही। कभी ऋषि मुनियों के ज्ञान से, कभी योग के प्रकाश से और कभी धर्म के विचार से। आज पूरा विश्व जलवायु परिवर्तन और ग्लोबल वार्मिंग से होने वाली आपदाओं से जूझ रहा है। तो उनसे लड़ने के सही मार्ग को खोजने के लिए उत्तराखंड सरकार 6th वर्ल्ड कांग्रेस ऑफ डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट का आयोजन कर रही है। आखिर आपदा से जूझना और उससे जीतना हमसे बेहतर कौन जानता है। नमस्कार, धन्यवाद। आदिकाल से उत्तराखंड की धरती विश्व को सही मार्ग दिखाती आ रही। कभी ऋषि मुनियों के ज्ञान से, कभी योग के प्रकाश से और कभी धर्म के विचार से। आज पूरा विश्व जलवायु परिवर्तन और ग्लोबल वार्मिंग से होने वाली आपदाओं से जूझ रहा है। तो उनसे लड़ने के सही मार्ग को खोजने के लिए उत्तराखंड सरकार 6th वर्ल्ड कांग्रेस ऑफ डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट का आयोजन कर रही है। आखिर आपदा से जूझना और उससे जीतना हमसे बेहतर कौन जानता है। नमस्कार, धन्यवाद। आदिकाल से उत्तराखंड की धरती विश्व को सही मार्ग दिखाती आ रही। कभी ऋषि मुनियों के ज्ञान से, कभी योग के प्रकाश से और कभी धर्म के विचार से। आज पूरा विश्व जलवायु परिवर्तन और ग्लोबल वार्मिंग से होने वाली आपदाओं से जूझ रहा है। तो उनसे लड़ने के सही मार्ग को खोजने के लिए उत्तराखंड सरकार 6th वर्ल्ड कांग्रेस ऑफ डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट का आयोजन कर रही है। आखिर आपदा से जूझना और उससे जीतना हमसे बेहतर कौन जानता है। नमस्कार, धन्यवाद। आदिकाल से उत्तराखंड की धरती विश्व को सही मार्ग दिखाती आ रही। कभी ऋषि मुनियों के ज्ञान से, कभी योग के प्रकाश से और कभी धर्म के विचार से। आज पूरा विश्व जलवायु परिवर्तन और ग्लोबल वार्मिंग से होने वाली आपदाओं से जूझ रहा है। तो उनसे लड़ने के सही मार्ग को खोजने के लिए उत्तराखंड सरकार 6th वर्ल्ड कांग्रेस ऑफ डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट का आयोजन कर रही है। आखिर आपदा से जूझना और उससे जीतना हमसे बेहतर कौन जानता है। नमस्कार, धन्यवाद। आदिकाल से उत्तराखंड की धरती विश्व को सही मार्ग दिखाती आ रही। कभी ऋषि मुनियों के ज्ञान से, कभी योग के प्रकाश से और कभी धर्म के विचार से। आज पूरा विश्व जलवायु परिवर्तन और ग्लोबल वार्मिंग से होने वाली आपदाओं से जूझ रहा है। तो उनसे लड़ने के सही मार्ग को खोजने के लिए उत्तराखंड सरकार 6th वर्ल्ड कांग्रेस ऑफ डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट का आयोजन कर रही है। आखिर आपदा से जूझना और उससे जीतना हमसे बेहतर कौन जानता है। नमस्कार, धन्यवाद। आदिकाल से उत्तराखंड की धरती विश्व को सही मार्ग दिखाती आ रही। कभी ऋषि मुनियों के ज्ञान से, कभी योग के प्रकाश से और कभी धर्म के विचार से। आज पूरा विश्व जलवायु परिवर्तन और ग्लोबल वार्मिंग से होने वाली आपदाओं से जूझ रहा है। तो उनसे लड़ने के सही मार्ग को खोजने के लिए उत्तराखंड सरकार 6th वर्ल्ड कांग्रेस ऑफ डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट का आयोजन कर रही है। आखिर आपदा से जूझना और उससे जीतना हमसे बेहतर कौन जानता है। नमस्कार, धन्यवाद। आदिकाल से उत्तराखंड की धरती विश्व को सही मार्ग दिखाती आ रही। कभी ऋषि मुनियों के ज्ञान से, कभी योग के प्रकाश से और कभी धर्म के विचार से। आज पूरा विश्व जलवायु परिवर्तन और ग्लोबल वार्मिंग से होने वाली आपदाओं से जूझ रहा है। तो उनसे लड़ने के सही मार्ग को खोजने के लिए उत्तराखंड सरकार 6th वर्ल्ड कांग्रेस ऑफ डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट का आयोजन कर रही है। आखिर आपदा से जूझना और उससे जीतना हमसे बेहतर कौन जानता है। नमस्कार, धन्यवाद। आदिकाल से उत्तराखंड की धरती विश्व को सही मार्ग दिखाती आ रही। कभी ऋषि मुनियों के ज्ञान से, कभी योग के प्रकाश से और कभी धर्म के विचार से। आज पूरा विश्व जलवायु परिवर्तन और ग्लोबल वार्मिंग से होने वाली आपदाओं से जूझ रहा है। तो उनसे लड़ने के सही मार्ग को खोजने के लिए उत्तराखंड सरकार 6th वर्ल्ड कांग्रेस ऑफ डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट का आयोजन कर रही है। आखिर आपदा से जूझना और उससे जीतना हमसे बेहतर कौन जानता है। नमस्कार, धन्यवाद। आदिकाल से उत्तराखंड की धरती विश्व को सही मार्ग दिखाती आ रही। कभी ऋषि मुनियों के ज्ञान से, कभी योग के प्रकाश से और कभी धर्म के विचार से। आज पूरा विश्व जलवायु परिवर्तन और ग्लोबल वार्मिंग से होने वाली आपदाओं से जूझ रहा है। तो उनसे लड़ने के सही मार्ग को खोजने के लिए उत्तराखंड सरकार 6th वर्ल्ड कांग्रेस ऑफ डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट का आयोजन कर रही है। आखिर आपदा से जूझना और उससे जीतना हमसे बेहतर कौन जानता है। नमस्कार, धन्यवाद। आदिकाल से उत्तराखंड की धरती विश्व को सही मार्ग दिखाती आ रही। कभी ऋषि मुनियों के ज्ञान से, कभी योग के प्रकाश से। आज पूरा विश्व जलवायु परिवर्तन इनसे लड़ने के सही मार्ग को 6th वर्ल्ड कांग्रेस। आखिर आपदा से जूझना और उससे जीतना हमसे बेहतर कौन जानता है। नमस्कार, धन्यवाद। आदिकाल से उत्तराखंड की धरती विश्व को सही मार्ग दिखाती आ रही। कभी ऋषि मुनियों के ज्ञान से, कभी योग के प्रकाश से और कभी धर्म के विचार से। आज पूरा विश्व जलवायु परिवर्तन और ग्लोबल वार्मिंग से होने वाली आपदाओं से जूझ रहा है। तो उनसे लड़ने के सही मार्ग को खोजने के लिए उत्तराखंड सरकार 6th वर्ल्ड कांग्रेस ऑफ डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट का आयोजन कर रही है। आखिर आपदा से जूझना और उससे जीतना हमसे बेहतर कौन जानता है। नमस्कार, धन्यवाद। आदिकाल से उत्तराखंड की धरती विश्व को सही मार्ग दिखाती आ रही। कभी ऋषि मुनियों के ज्ञान से, कभी योग के प्रकाश से और कभी धर्म के विचार से। आज पूरा विश्व जलवायु परिवर्तन और ग्लोबल वार्मिंग से होने वाली आपदाओं से जूझ रहा है, तो उनसे लड़ने के सही मार्ग को खोजने के लिए उत्तराखंड सरकार 6th वर्ल्ड कांग्रेस ऑफ डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट का आयोजन कर रही है। आखिर आपदा से जूझना और उससे जीतना हमसे बेहतर कौन जानता है। नमस्कार, धन्यवाद। आदिकाल से उत्तराखंड की धरती विश्व को सही मार्ग दिखाती आ रही है, कभी ऋषि मुनियों के ज्ञान से, कभी योग के प्रकाश से और कभी धर्म के विचार से। आज पूरा विश्व जलवायु परिवर्तन और ग्लोबल वार्मिंग से होने वाली आपदाओं से जूझ रहा है, तो उनसे लड़ने के सही मार्ग को खोजने के लिए उत्तराखंड सरकार
I think we could
6th World
start the
Congress
session
of
as we are
Disaster
running
Management
already
का
almost
आयोजन
for
कर रहे हैं।
30 minutes late. So
आखिर आपदा से
good afternoon
जूझना
everyone.
और
I am
उससे
Bhola Shah,
जीतना
an architect
हमसे
at
बेहतर
heart
कौन
and
जानता
a disaster risk reduction professional by passion. I am an alumni of IIT Roorkee and at present I am working as an assistant professor in the Department of
आदिकाल से
Architecture of
उत्तराखंड की
Assam Royal
धरती
Global University. That's
विश्व
in
को
Assam.
सही मार्ग दिखाती है।
And along with that, I'm also a founding
कभी ऋषि
member of
मुनियों के ज्ञान
CRRP
से,
India, that is
कभी
Confederation
योग
of
के
Risk Reduction
प्रकाश से,
Professionals of India.
कभी
This
धर्म
session
के
has
विचार।
been hosted by Grid Corps and CRRP India. So CRRP India is a non-profit organization and also a national platform for youth and young professionals working in the field of disaster risk management and climate change adaptation. So we have gathered here today to discuss on innovations in disaster risk reduction and resilience, challenges in tackling DRR issues, with an aim of navigating the complex nexus of climate change and development and see if our past can be our guide. So I guess today's session is appropriately titled History, Heat and Hope. With rapid urbanization happening all around the city, these cities are exposed to climate-related hazards such as extreme heat events and urban flooding. In addition to physical risk posed by the climate change, historical cities in specific also faces social and economic challenges. However, traditional knowledge is often marginalized in urban planning and development processes. This can lead to implementation of solutions that are not culturally appropriate or effective in reducing climate risk. There are a number of challenges to building resilient historical cities. One challenge is that these cities often have a complex and layered history. This makes it difficult to identify and address all the factors that contribute to the climate vulnerability. Despite the challenges, there are also a number of opportunities for building resilient historical cities. One opportunity is to integrate traditional knowledge and place-based wisdom into urban planning and development policies. This can help to ensure that climate adaptation strategies are culturally appropriate and effective. Building resilient historical cities requires a careful balance between perceiving cultural heritage and adapting to climate change. This technical session will bring together experts from a variety of disciplines to discuss the challenges and opportunities of building resilient and inclusive cities in the face of climate change. Without further delay, I would like to call upon the keynote speaker of the session, Professor Iftikhar Ahmed, all the way from Newcastle University, Australia, to talk about making a city resilient. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, so sit on slideshow mode. Yeah, that's right. Sorry. Okay. Right. So this is fine, I think. It's a small room, and I have a loud mouth, so that's all. That helps. Okay. So look, good afternoon, everyone, fellow participants, dear friends. So what I will talk today, it's about a project done. Now let me rephrase it differently. This first author, Hint, she is actually a postgraduate scholar at the Asian Institute of Technology. So this is her thesis that she started working on. then she started working with us to develop it into a paper. So this is the contribution that we did. So I think it might be, so when Dr. Ripal Kangji approached me, so I thought this might be relevant for this session. But at this point, all I can really show you is the methodology, because she has not done the data collection. But you can give your critiques and feedback on the methodology, whether it can be improved, so that I can give it back to her. I will meet her at the conference in Bangkok in just 3 or 4 days from now. So, okay, so that's that. So, let me just look at this, it's just easier. So, look, I won't go through all the points. Basically, it's just looking at the heat-related challenges in Bangkok, and particularly in the context of informal settlements. Informal settlements, some people tend to call them slums, but that is the idea. And let me just move, then I'll tell you a little bit more. And this is some of the statistics of Bangkok, and as you can see, it's one of the large megacities, one of the largest megacities in Asia, and you can see that it's urbanizing very much. More than 50% is urbanized already in Thailand, and also they live in informal settlements. And I think, and you can see the temperature rise also from 1994 to 2009 is jumped up like more than 10 degrees. So the other thing I just want to tell you also is this kind of development, this growth, this rapid economic development, this doesn't actually solve the problem of poverty. In fact, it actually exacerbates poverty by actually making the rich richer and the poor getting more and more disenfranchised. So this is exactly what's happening, because when you think about Bangkok, it's a relatively affluent city. That's the image you have in your mind, famous for tourism and all that stuff. But you don't realize that they have roughly 25 or 30% of the population live in informal settlements. This is a significant proportion. So these are some of the threats, and of course this is global, nothing specific to Bangkok, but of course this kind of rapid urban development means that you're trapping the heat into the cities, and you get your heat island. And yeah, but with this stuff, the rapid economic development which I alluded to earlier will get derailed because of this heat impacts. The thing that the economic national GDP is going to decrease by 4.9% when it reaches 2 degrees, and we heard in the morning some speaker that it will reach 2 degrees. We are not going to abate that heat-related mortality and all that. So you're familiar with graphs like that, the fluctuation. Remember that heat and climate change have two aspects. One, of course, is the consistent rise, which we always talk about as the heat regime is increasing. But hidden within that, there's also this unpredictability. What's the right word for it? It's unpredictable in the sense that it's erratic. Erratic, that's the word I was looking for. So it's erratic. It can go up and down, sudden jumps in temperature, sudden rain in the winter when it doesn't rain. All those kind of things, the unpredictability and the erratic patterns, together with the increase, it's just actually very, it's a very different and complex scenario. What did I do? Sorry. So I'm just going back very quickly. So that's the study area. Very quickly to show you, is called Klong Tue. It's one of the largest slums in Bangkok, and like I said, 20% of the city's people live in informal settlements, and it's near the coast, and a lot of these people actually work in the port as stevedores and other kind of manual labor kind of arrangements. Election. So this is the methodology. This is the heart of what I wanted to talk to you about, and you will see that this is a methodology to assess the vulnerability of informal settlers, and using that assessment, the risk assessment, then you can develop a risk reduction plan, basically, to inform them. That is the basic idea. So this methodology has basically a very simple idea. It's got these indicators. How do you measure? Every time you talk about measurement, you need indicators. So the indicators here, they have been defined according to exposure sensitivity and coping capacity. That's how are you defining your vulnerability, and within that, and you can see the different indicators within those three main areas is that, this whole spread, I won't go into the details, but then you can see here, you can see the list. So under exposure, you may have things like roof materials exposed to heat, for example, or if you're coming to sensitivity, whether the family is composed of young children headed by a single woman, etc. And capacity, of course, the social capital, what they can do by themselves. And obviously in these, not by choice, but by compulsion, the social capital is very high in these communities. And at least the bonding social capital, but the linking and the bridging social capital is perhaps not strong enough, which is why they cannot access the kind of conduits to the governance regime. So, no, I'm so sorry. What am I doing? Technologically inept. Okay, that's the right one. We have done that. Yeah, so I talked to you about the methodology. It's very quickly how we have set up the indicators for doing the risk assessment, and this is how the data is analyzed. And of course, I'm not going to explain those equations to you. So basically, there are some entry points the study can try to help define. One of the entry points is, of course, at the community level, and then at the institutional level. And perhaps the institutional level is very important, because the Thai government doesn't have a heat action plan. They have nothing on the table. So this might be one of the most preliminary founding pillars for such an action plan. Yeah, so that's what I talked about, and that's your summary. So the internal threats, of course, like Thailand, it's a tropical country and all that, and so, but at this time, because of climate change, obviously, we need to work on these internal conditions, and external also, the tools and methodologies to do it. Perhaps we need support, technical support, to actually do that work. So this, again, the synthesis of global and local, formal and informal knowledge systems, knowledge streams. Right, I think that's about it from me. Here's some photos of Klongtui, just to give you an idea of the slum settlements in Bangkok. Yeah, thank you very much for your time. I'm happy to take any questions later if you want.
Thank you, sir. I think it was a lot to learn in such a short span of time, but I think we'll have more to discuss on this. So now we start with the presentation of the first speaker, that is of the session, that is Professor Rajiv Shaw from Keio University, Japan. He has a recorded message for us, so let's hear it out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Rajiv Shaw from Keio University in Japan. I'm sorry that I can't be there in this important event. But let me talk about a little bit on my own experience on the IPCC 6th assessment report, especially on the Asia chapter, and try to focus a little bit on the key issues of adaptation in Asia. As you know that the overall global risk landscape is changing very rapidly. So, of course, if you see the different types of risk, be it environmental risk, economic risk, geopolitical risk, so this has been always evolving. Back in 2020, when we saw the whole COVID-19, and so infectious disease became a very strong risk. But with the infectious disease, when we had the analysis of 2020 in 2021, I'm talking about the World Economic Forum Global Risk Outlook, they pointed out that some of the digital divide or the digital power concentration has become the new emerging risk. All of us, we understand that during COVID, we have actually turned quite a bit our whole lifestyle, whether it is work, whether it is education, whether it is healthcare, to more on the digital ways. We are very privileged to have the digital connectivity, but possibly the whole world does not have the equal digital penetration. So there has been an inequality which has been developed, and which will possibly be a major future risk in connection with other environmental risk, be it climate change, be it disasters, be it biodiversity losses, and so on. So when you talk about, say, for example, a typhoon early warning system, and now that we have quite strong presence of app-based or mobile phone-based early warning, but if there is a failure in the digital system, or if certain group of people, say for example the aged population who are living in small rural area, even in case of Japan or any other developed or developing countries, I think to reach them through the digital media will be a quite challenge. So my first point here is that we need to put the climate change perspective, disaster risk reduction perspective in the overall global risk landscape, which is very dynamically changing. And a traditional risk reduction or risk management process possibly is not applicable anymore unless we make proper measures. So that's my point number one. Coming to the IPCC, what we call the upper level statement, of course in Asia, flood, regional drought, fire, this are already increasing, and this will increase. We will see more impacts on the human being, but also different types of species, both in land and ocean. And this is what we call a statement of very high confidence. Very high confidence in IPCC means that we have a larger number of science which points out to this particular conclusion, and all the science actually, the larger number are pointing to the similar type of conclusion. So that's the IPCC upper level statement, what we say. Now, among the different types of issues, like we need to, in this particular chapter, Asia chapter, we have focused very strongly on the different types of risk driver and what we call the detection and attribution. So we have very strong heat wave, we have very strong coastal urban flooding, then biodiversity losses, dust storm, and sea level rise. And another very important thing is the urban heat island. So these are possibly a major, there are also many other issues, in total around 12 to 15 risk driver, but among these, the one which I mentioned are possibly having more stronger impact. And of course, the agriculture, the water, and the health sector will have a major challenges for that. So that's the second part. The third part is, of course, like we have been earlier in the fourth assessment report, fifth assessment report, we have been talking about very specific different types of hazard. But in this assessment report, one of our major focus was that it will be more the complex compound disasters. Compound disasters or complex disasters are like 2 or 3 different types of hazards possibly occurring together. And that will have a more severe impact. And also the cascading effect of the disasters will be very important. So again, our adaptation practices, which we possibly used to have possibly one type of hazard, is again under major challenge unless we need to actually shift our adaptation practices to more cascading, complex, and compounded hazards. So that's a very important part. We also focused quite a bit on this maladaptation or short-term adaptation. So by maladaptation, I say for example, most part of Asia has the rainfall-fed agriculture, but certain pockets they have also irrigation agriculture. And when we have less rainfall, we need to get more water from the underground through different types of pumps, whether it is the tube wells or deep tube wells and so on, and which is possibly good for immediate problem, which is the water scarcity in agriculture sector, but it is actually drawing the underground water table much below. So unless we make a proper planning for the catchment area which recharge the water, it's very difficult to actually make a proper balance of the water system. Another example, say for example, when we say that there are the sea level rise, we often make the sea wall to protect the communities, to protect our properties from the sea level rise, which is again temporarily possibly an adaptation practice. But then the longer term ecosystem impact for that on the marine biodiversity is again a major challenge. So there are many this type of examples, like how we make a proper balance between maladaptation and this what we call the short-term to medium and long-term adaptation. Another aspects of adaptation is the limits to adaptation. Say for example, we have certain species like corals which are possibly the adaptation limits has crossed. So possibly with adaptation we cannot protect that type of coral reef. When we have the small coastal, like the communities who are living in the coastal areas, who has relatively lower socioeconomic condition, or even the small landholder farmers who are possibly focusing on the rain-fed agriculture, they are possibly the limits to adaptation is a major challenge, and there people need to shift from this adaptation to another aspect. So these are possibly some of the issues which we discuss very strongly. Another important aspect is this climate resilient development pathways, what we call. And we have focused quite strongly in different types of development pathways, and the governance and the technology becomes a core of this development pathways. And within that governance, we have strongly recognized the Japan's Ministry of Environment's regional circular and ecological sphere model, which is called RCS model. That has been a major governance mechanism where we have a very strong urban-rural linkage of different types of resource, and this broader planning, like we all understand the cities will be at risk due to climate change, but cities and the nearby rural area, how we make a broader resource management or the resource planning, I think that's one of the major issue. And my last comment is on different types of disruptive technologies or emerging technologies. I always say that today's emerging technology is tomorrow's essential technology. So how we actually use this technology for different types of adaptive action. So the adaptive governance has become a very major pillar for different types of adaptation mechanism in future. There are many different issues, but I think I have limited time, so I will stop here, and thank you very much for your kind listening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to call our second speaker, Mr. Binu.
Thank you very much. My name is Rajiv Shaw from Keio University in Japan. I'm sorry that I can't be there in this.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to call our second speaker, Mr. Binu Matthew, CEO of Taru Leading Edge. He will be talking on the global trends, but local action. Sir, the floor is yours.
control here? नहीं ये नहीं है. Give me control, I'll do it.
Wait, sir. Yes, sir.
Good evening, and as the tone has been set for the urban heat, because heat is one of the topic which has been asked me to present, so I'll restrict to the heat and the heat action plan, how the heat action plan can be localized, to what degree, and how the attempts has been made towards that. So urban heat island is a important phenomena, and because one of the key element of these are slow disaster which has a slow inset, so we don't realize as a catastrophic impacts, but it brings a huge impact to the community infrastructures and the ecology. I'll restrict myself with 7 slides which I thought is the best way to present here. How the urban heat amplifies, specifying the case studies of Kolkata in particular to understand that how it changes, and the key challenges of urban risk, what are the frameworks towards it, and the adaptation and mitigative strategies. Brief introduction: Taru has been working in the disaster space for a longer duration of time, which brings an experience of 25 years of working in the urban framework and the urban setting, which is much more complex in terms of size, in terms of community interactions, which are more disintegrated, or it has a different phenomena as a urban landscape. So I'll don't want to get into it, but let me also introduce about the urban heat. Urban heat in specific, it looks about how the urban heat could be categorized. Basically, one is of course the natural environment which brings in. It also has a anthropogenic features which brings even more heat island phenomena, which is very much evident. I'm not getting into details, but we know the last year which has gone by has been a severely hottest year which has been established. So taking that into consideration, how the urban heat can be mitigated, to what degree, taking a focus on Kolkata. So how the urban heat get amplified? First is our land use, space which is there, that is one of the basic element, material and the surface temperatures, air temperature and humidity, and the sky factors, how the sky factor values are there. Therefore, we have to take this factor into account. These are the phenomena by which it gets amplified. I want to demonstrate how heat in one particular city, in one day, how it looks like. It's more towards a space at the streets of Kolkata. You will realize that the temperature has an impact at 3 o'clock, it is the maximum level. And if you look more closely at around 18 hours, that's 6 o'clock, again it peaks up. So this additional impact that you are seeing is because we have sensors of the transportation material. Slide is different actually, so that is the problem. So we have a sensor in Kolkata which is around 300 sensors which we have kept, which factor into account the sensors which get operationalized in many locations. We have these small sensors give us the information on a real-time basis. So this real-time information help us to find out within the city how the temperature changes. So This is again for a different city. So we have an information about how the temperature pattern changes across the cities. So coming to the next important factor is about the urban heat risk. How is getting impacted because of the communication challenges which we have, associated challenges, technical challenges. I'm not getting into the details because it is quite evident here. But the reactive responses is one of the basic challenge which we face, because only that time of the moment we come to know that this is going to take place, how to communicate, that became a huge challenge. Then the challenge is about the scaling of the heat. It is not across, that is coming the next slide which I'm going to present. The technical challenge is of the cooling dilemma, how to cool the city of that magnitude. Then comes the socio-economic challenge, because there is inequity. Of course, urban is more contrasting, and because of the resource constraint within the group and within the strata, it became another set of challenges. Environmental challenges, I don't want to get into it in further. Financial, of course, because private investments are very hard to come. Public investments to such a large systems which are in place in the urban scenario, it became even more complex, that how the vintage infrastructures, if at all we want to decongest, how are we going to do that? So these are the phenomena by which we have to think and move forward with the challenges. And in the governance system, if you look at the heat as a parameter, you realize that there is no specific department or specific who takes this agenda further, or they could take it forward. So at the same time, it comes and goes, but the intensity which is increasing, it has become a posed a huge challenge. I want to just take three factors, taking this idea about how to prepare, how to adapt, and how to react to it. So I'm taking this parameter on the health front, like how the community infrastructures or occupational health could be a challenge, and how that could be avoided, or what are the ways of doing that. There are many gadgets which are there, which could be used at the frontline workers. You have seen the traffic police, how they are going to operate. These are very affordable materials that could be used. People who are the outdoor and who are exposed to heat, how can that be managed? And what time, I've already mentioned that how it has to be done. What are the methods of how one has to prepare for it? How are we going to react to it? And how are we going to adapt to those challenges? So innovative technologies are a number of innovative technologies. I know that for every heat dilemma, we used to tell that tree has to be planted. That is more common, but where in the urban space? The constraint of space is one of the very important components. We have to understand that. So in the urban scenario, how are we going to plant a tree in such a large magnitude? So which could be going to help you to reduce the impact of the cooling can be brought out in a longer duration of time. What type of tree plantation has to happen? Because we have seen somewhere where trees are getting uprooted, and sometimes it is getting deep rooted, which impact your walls and buildings. So therefore, there are different ways of planting trees, which we have also demonstrated in other projects, that will help us to understand how the tree plantation in the urban environment has to take place. So urban planning, we have different technologies. The roof cooling technologies which are there, how the roof cooling technologies can be placed. I always have this strong argument that the green infrastructure or the green spaces can be improved, or the areas which have to develop we can plan, but the city which is already developed, brown space, how are we going to plan it? That is remains a challenge. This has to be very seriously addressed, and there are 3-4 technologies which I have just added into it, like how that cool roof technologies for different community levels, and what are the options that are going to given to them. District cooling systems, that is in India we have Delhi airport. It starts also from the gift city. There are different methodologies are there. But when it comes to the community groups, how the roof space can be used as a cooling systems, that could be discussed. I can be happy to share the technologies that are tested. This is about the urban space I thought of just presenting. Of course, there's one video which is there. I want to present that we have sensors across the city, but how these sensors can be placed across the city, who can make it for you, and how can a community approach can be built on those type of systems. Sound can reduce. Mute कर दीजिए मैं बता दूंगा. So this is again the sensors across the city. We have around 200 sensors. Some sensors are more precise. Yeah, you can run it. So this is the hearing impaired children, how they are became a part of developing these sensors. This is in Surat city. We train them to prepare those sensors that could be used at the community level, and also they will be a part of it. We call as earth leaders. So it gives you temperature, humidity, air quality. So these systems are built, and this is one of the ways by which these informations get implemented, and it is across 300 sensors are placed in the city of Calcutta, where we use this information for the flood warning systems. Heat is one part of it, but it's a complete environmental features are there. That is how it is being planned and executed at the city level. Thank you so much for the patient listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. I think it has been a very good learning phase. So before we move to the next speaker, I would like to have a short question answer session, so that whatever our last three speakers have said, based on that, we can have some interaction, maybe possible if anybody has any questions. Yes, sir.
Good evening, and thank you for the wonderful presentation. So my name is Bharat Mahadevan, and I run a startup called Climate Bee Ventures. We are basically working on hydrological risk. But in the past, I have also worked on urban heat island, and I was just wondering, this case study that you showed for Calcutta. So the first question I had is what is the difference between temperature and heat stress? Because what I understand is that the health impacts are because of heat stress. So when you did your urban heat island assessment, did you focus on the metric of temperature or heat stress? So that is the first question. The second question is, if you did the heat stress calculation at because it's a combination of temperature and humidity, at what point would one have to measure the air temperature? It's definitely not going to be the surface temperature; it has to be the air temperature, and again the air temperature would vary with height. So again, are there standards like WMO standards that you followed for that? So that's my second question. And the third thing is, did you define any kind of thresholds, for assessing the heat stress and its health impacts? Is it based on the metabolism of human, the human metabolism, and that's one thing. And the last question is, all the mitigation options that you suggested, it takes time for implementing, right? Like land use planning, vegetation, it takes time for the trees to grow. It takes time to really change the land use based on the new policies that come up. So how would you actually assess the mitigation impacts? Can you quantify it? And are policymakers really willing to wait for that long, from the time of risk assessment till the results are actually being realized?
I'll take the first question one by one, because as I also work on the flood, because it was on heat. Our idea is about the environmental monitoring systems. Because it was on the heat, so I thought of putting specifically as such. As you have rightly pointed out, the heat temperature, the surface temperature is the surface temperature that you get. But when you take the sensors, we're having a different layers. So sensors, what we keep the height of the sensor at the human level, where you get information at that height level. So you get a temperature as well as the air quality at that height. So this height is the air temperature. That air temperature, it is 36 degree, that is what the threshold, which is called, plus it has a humidity component. That is called bulb heat clearly defined. So the threshold is 36 degrees centigrade, which defines that this is the human condition by at that point in time. That is the threshold, as you have pointed out. That is the threshold which we can have the intake of the heat. So that is how this system functions. So the heat, as we are now, most of the data that we have is about the surface temperature. So as I have pointed out 4 factors, material also reflect heat. So when we are at a certain height, you get the radiations from different quarters, and you have number of sensors. I could have shown that because there are number of sensors are there. So at the community level, school level, many places. So these information which come to us, then we find out the heat stress part of it. So same is the case with the flooding. We have the flood modelers with the real-time database. This flood information comes in, and this information is passed on to the departments. From the catchment area, we get the flood data. That is about the rain and early warnings that we get from different sources. These combined together to find out, we run the model of the flooding that we have, and the expected vulnerable area is already with us, informing the authorities in advance that these are the localities that are going to get flooded. Taking the example of Chennai, which is going to get heavy rains coming day after tomorrow. So we have Chennai flood system in place. So if estimated rainfall falls into such categories, which are the vulnerable areas that are informed, around 534 points are there. Just want to extend further. In urban setup, most important is the road network, because that is the most getting clogged out. So what happens the moment we get this information, around 29 points are there which we tell, these are the critical points at your city, you have to keep into account. So we decongest the road, and we also give the alternate routes. So decongestion and alternate routes help the city in understanding the impact. That is called how we are going to have a impact-based warning system. So we are informing in advance that if of this intensity comes, there are underpasses, we have identified the locations, we inform them, that city officials, that these areas you have to tell them. For example, drivers used to tell us that since if we come to the congested site, then there is no point, I can't go back, I can't go forward. So 4 kilometers in advance, we tell them that you need not have to travel here, it is getting blocked. This information is given well in advance to the traffic operators. So they stop that, and we also give them the alternate routes. So this is how the urban systems function. System has to adopt that. So this has been tried out in Chennai, not everywhere. We have been working out how to settle these systems at the different spaces. I hope I've answered your question. Thank you.
Quick comment on your question on heat stress versus temperature. This is very interesting because the work that we have been doing in Bangkok, the heat stress is actually a combination of temperature as well as humidity. And humidity there is actually very high. The heat may not be that high. Even in the 30s, the humidity is above 90%.
No, I was just saying to Sir's point that I think even in Europe when they declare heat waves, it's when temperatures are not as high as in India, but still like maybe the humidity factor would contribute to the higher heat stress.
Each city has a different threshold. That we have to understand, because when you work in the coastal city, 37 degree, plus the humidity is very, that's the threshold. But when you go to the dry areas, the Ahmedabad area, that's quite different. So this threshold has to be there. And this level of information, I certainly will take citizen laboratory which I call, because citizen information, one goes to the IIT level, other the citizens as they know. And that's how we combine these two.
Any more questions, anyone? Yeah.
Sir, I basically come from Kolkata. So when you talk about the things that you have actually learned from your work in Kolkata, what seems to be the problem in implementing a proper heat action plan in Kolkata? Because I've been working with the Gujarat Institute of Disaster Management, and you know about the Ahmedabad heat action plan and how it has been implemented. So what seems to be the problem?
Heat and flood has a very common factor. The moment it gets over, it is have a very short memory. So the moment that what we are talking about the flood, after 2 months nobody speaks about that. Heat, when it's talk at the peak of 15 days, this is the talk of the town. After that, no one even cares for it. These are the two important phenomena which we have to address, because catastrophic impacts or the events get more attention. When it comes to the city which is having a recurring experiences, they have, like Mumbai in India in specific, if you ask me, Mumbai, Chennai are the cities which have been much more proactive when it comes to flooding, because it has become a recurring event for them. So when it has become a recurring event that is in their memory, and also they plan well in advance, those system comes in. Heat has a slow onset, and still we are at the very elementary stage, but I can give you two examples where it has worked. Surat, there was hospital at pediatric session was the first top floor. So moment they realized that this top floor has a high heat intensity, they brought it back to the second floor, from the second to the first floor, and that has a huge impact on the using of space. Your building space, how are we going to use it? So it may not require so much of changes to happen. We have to use our space more wisely. That is one factor that has to take into account. Then only this sensitization will come, because great jargons which comes in the climate space become things more difficult. I believe we have to demystify these jargons and make it so easy to communicate, so that they can easily handle. These are the repercussions which is coming. The helmet that you have seen, the moment it became a comfort for them, they realized it is important. If I give big things, stories to them, it is difficult to get absorbed. So police force is one of the easiest things, because they work hard and they are at the forefront in many ways. So we have to target those things, and the sensitivity has to be brought in. It may not be taken across the city. It may be a very tough task.
You asked about the barriers to implementing or initiating a heat action plan. Let me suggest something, you can disagree with me. When the heat sets in, who suffers? The rich go inside, they have the air conditioning, okay? But the poor suffer. No one cares, right? They don't have the political voice, and that is one reason. On the contrary, say there are floods, then there's a lot of hue and outcry because it affects the transport system, and it affects the elite and the rich. So that is why they need to do something with the heat. Don't give a damn. There's all those guys in the informal settlement, which is 20% of our city, that's fine. Don't suffer. That is the main barrier in Kolkata. I imagine is exactly the same.
To ask it because of shortage of time, but still I'll ask it. And after I ask this question on the dais, people generally dislike me, but it's okay to be disliked, I think. So the question comes around, like when you are talking about the present scenario of Kolkata and the poor been suffering, it all turns around to like we speak of the term land use and land cover has been changed. So when we say land use and land cover has been changed, the poor did not change it. It was changed by people who have good knowledge like us. So where do we go around with this? Because I think people, when they are doing planning, like because I'm an architect, when we are doing planning, and we are the ones who change the land use and land cover for future development. And in the scenario of future development, we are increasing the future risk. And when you showed the example of Bangkok, I think one thing that comes to mind, if you need to have a resilient city, you need to have your backyard very clean. And that is what, it's not happening in any city you take around. So not a question, but a thought process that comes to mind is, where do we stand this? Because we having proper knowledge while we are going for planning, while we are changing the land use, land cover, we are ourselves increasing the risk. So how does it justify the poor who are suffering? So a small comment on this will be very useful, sir.
How can I capture it? I'll try, okay? I'll try. Look, I don't know how to answer you properly. I think one main issue is that we have all more or less subscribed to the neoliberal paradigm as the model. And that is the model in its power to. Because of that, the poor, of course, don't espouse that model because it's not relevant to their context. So they are left out. So you're talking about inclusivity, all that is coming in, but essentially the bottom of the problem is that. It is that the poor are voiceless. They do not have the capacity to be able to make those changes at the policy level. And the policymakers are, of course, not interested in the dialogue because then they would have to change themselves. You know, in the morning, this is exactly my last thing I say. It's not about changing them, we have to change ourselves first. As architects, you are trained as an architect, I'm also an architect. What do I do? If a rich guy comes to me and says, we have a project, a beautiful building on the canal, we'll close the canal and build it. Would you do it? Many architects would do it. It's a good project, otherwise you'll go hungry, you have to feed your family. And the poor people, they can't afford you, but they need you the most. They need you the most. So I think we have to redirect ourselves, rechannel. I don't know, I don't have a formula. I wish I had a formula and a prescription to give to you that tomorrow, please. It won't. It's important to identify the barriers first before you can address the problem. If you don't identify the barriers, if you bypass them, that is what is happening. So you're bypassing the actual barrier and you're trying to go somewhere, short-circuiting it, but when you're getting there, you realize that the problem is still there. And it's going to keep on bugging you forever. So nature-based solution, right? You put vegetation on a building. What does it do? It harbors mosquitoes. You get dengue. You get fever. The poor don't like those things. They cut them down. They are a nuisance for us. They're pests. And we beautiful architects from the Western countries come beautiful nature. It's not solving us. I was trained as an architect. Sorry, I'm taking a bit more time. I was trained as an architect. Give louvers so they'll bring in natural ventilation. I go back and I see the plant has closed everything because it brings in all the dust and noise from outside. So this is the reality. Same with the nature-based solutions. They just cut them down. They don't want them, because the reality, their circumstances are so different and so basic. The problems are at a basic level, and you're trying to solve it with very sophisticated tools. Sorry.
No, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. So thank you, sir. Now we will move to the next part of our session. Now we have our next session who will be joining us online, Dr. Abhiyan Tiwari from NRDC, India. He will be discussing on the heat action plan. Abhiyan, sir, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bhola. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir, you're audible, sir.
Great. Thank you so much. And first of all, before I thank the organizers, I should regret the organizers and also the participants and audience sitting in the room that I couldn't join physically in person there, although I really wanted it to be. But yeah, circumstances, which law is that? Whatever can go wrong will go wrong. Anyway, but we always try to may have contingencies, and that's our contingency that we are joining, and I'm able to join virtually here. I also couldn't listen to the previous speakers, so I might have missed few parts, but since I have gone through agenda, I can make a sense that what all could have been discussed. For example, the previous speaker was talking about the heat action plans. He also mentioned an example of a pediatric floor being shifted from the top floor of the hospital to the lower floors. That was from Ahmedabad, actually, the city, and the hospital's name is Shardaben Hospital. And I would say that incidents, and to some extent the same year. So this happened in 2010. Now, heat action plan largely been governed by, or loosely been governed by the disaster authorities, be it at state or at national level. But its genesis happened from the health sector, and that's the interesting story. All of you might be knowing what happened in Ahmedabad. So this 2010 heat wave spell in month of May in 2010 was very unprecedented for the city. City never experienced such a hot spell of hot days and hot nights in the third and fourth week of May. In 2010, and which in total, when we looked at the data of all-cause mortality, it came out that entire spell of extreme heat costed more than 800 excess deaths within a week, during which excess deaths than the average for that week that should have happened. And across that month, there were more than 1,300 excess deaths that happened. And similarly, the story was also, I mean, while this story was covered, I mean, this, incidents was covered by the local, health institutions like Indian Institute of Public Health. They noticed, that there was a flurry of emergency visits, and, the government hospitals were getting flooded with the heat stroke and sunstroke cases. And the hospitals were also not prepared for such a large surge. And similarly, the Shardaben Hospital, the then, uh, uh, associate professor of the pediatric department, Dr. Khyati Kakkad, she noticed that, the cases of hyperthermia in the neonates, which is rare. Usually, what we observe is the hyperthermia in the neonates. But in that incident, she noticed that, most of the neonates were struggling from hyperthermia. When they tried to rule out, there was no, underlying infection or anything like that. And even discharged patients were getting back with the complaint of hyperthermia. And that's where they realized that it could be because of the, ward being located on the top floor of the hospital. And on top of that, the roof was covered with black tar, to prevent the water seepage, which ultimately helped in absorbing more heat. While we were just talking about the building use and building types, absorbing more heat and getting, it transmitted and emitted back to the rooms down there. And this was reported, and this was in fact the first research paper of 2010 Ahmedabad heatwave event. And similarly, other researchers, Indian Institute of Public Health, Gandhinagar, the organization that I work for, Natural Resources Defense Council, India, we all came together and started working with the city government, the Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation, because the city was ready with the fresh experience of, or rather, uh, uh, dangerous experience that they never wanted to have of that heat wave spell. So there was a buy-in. There was a buy-in from the city authorities. Now the task was to have a tailor-made policy for a city level. There was no state level agency or a demand from that side, but from the city, like what could be done, where should what should be the components of the plan, who will fund that, what all research will be required, who will be the nodal agency, nodal authority in the plan that will coordinate all the actions. So while doing all this background research, the ultimate product came out as a first South Asian heat action plan in 2013, launched in the summers of 2013 in the city of Ahmedabad, which had very simple, tailor-made solution. Of course, and heat health early warning system, an inter-agency coordination plan, capacity building of the key stakeholders, particularly the health workers, the doctors, the paramedicals, building capacity of the hospitals as well, and then public awareness and community outreach measures, and lastly, also long-term measures such as school roof to reduce the exposure of the people and enhance the adaptation adaptation initiatives across the city. So these were some simple measures that we did put in Ahmedabad. We continued supporting the local municipal corporation. Health department became the nodal department, and within that department, a deputy health officer became the nodal officer of Ahmedabad heat action plan. And that plan, after its success, got scaled to several other cities. Then national agencies like NDMA, IMD, Health and Family Welfare Department, they took leadership at the national level and started working with their counterparts in the states and in the districts and cities to, advising them on developing their local heat health action plans or heat action plans. So that's the whole genesis in nutshell about this journey of heat action plans in India. It is still, as you all know, not a notified disaster. So there is no earmarked funding from the national level as of now. But yeah, states can notify heat as a state-specific disaster. There are more than 6 or 7 states who have notified heat as a state-specific disaster. So through which they can tap on the funds which are there with them in SDRF and SDMF. So recently we also started working with another city, city of Jodhpur, which is a different, experience. So while in Ahmedabad we started working through, the urban local body, in Jodhpur we started working with a local non-profit, a local women-led NGO which is working there. You all might be knowing the Mahila Housing Trust, which is working there in Jodhpur for more than a decade. So they had good connects with the local government. They already were working in improving the household and livelihood conditions of the slum women, in improving their living conditions. So Cool Roof, one of the initiatives that were advised as a mitigation and adaptation measure under heat action plan, was initially deployed there, and through that initial pilot project, the city invited to develop an entire heat action plan for the city itself. So while all other heat action plans were missing this component of doing a macro and micro level vulnerability assessment, this was the first heat action plan, rather a tier 2 heat action plan, tier 2 city heat action plan, which did a block level vulnerability, heat vulnerability assessment, and based on that, the resources are deployed within the cities. Of course, Jodhpur has also a rich culture and traditional, heritage and history. So that also need to be taken care into the action plan, and that's also something new that we are learning in that city, where Grid Corporation has already done some work, and we'll look forward to receive their advice on how such practices, traditional practices, could be incorporated in their local heat action plan. I'll rest my voice here, and if there is anything moderator would want me to speak about, or I'm here to for question answer as well.
Yes, sir. We'll come to the question and answer session afterwards, after the last speaker. Thank you, sir, for letting us know about the heat action plan, and especially of Jodhpur, and getting to know it. We have seen how much effort has gone on building because that's the first one, so as to say. So thank you for that, sir. Now we move to the last speaker of the session, that is Mr. Ripal Kanji, co-founder of Grid Corps, a startup based in Kolkata. He will be talking on understanding risks through perception of the communities, and also the importance of traditional knowledge. Sir, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. I will not keep you waiting anymore. It's almost the end of the day, so I will keep it very, very short. I will pick up from where Abhyant just left. So when NRDC India and the Mahila Housing Trust, they were planning on developing a heat action plan for Jodhpur, we got on to talking, and we thought that Jodhpur is very unique in a way that it has a very rich cultural heritage, traditional knowledge, and place-based wisdom, which needs to be taken care of, which needs to be included, integrated, and mainstreamed in the policy document. So we did a lot of study, and finally, as he mentioned, we got the first heat action plan of India, which has actually mainstreamed place-based wisdom, traditional knowledge, and indigenous practice to be used as a tool for heat action. So that's the first thing that we did. But we could have stopped there. However, we did not. We thought that we need to gather more evidence. And as Sir rightly pointed out, who is affected more by the heat? So we started going out and talking to the poor people, the local communities who do not have so much of access to everything that we have access to. And we started talking to them, and we found out two very interesting things. The first one is that when we talk about climate change, rising temperature is one thing that always happens. So they really do not have, the local people really do not have any problem with the rising heat. So it's perfectly fine for them. What bothers them is the humidity. That's terrible for them, and they're not really prepared for it. And the second thing that came up is that the old traditional houses of Jodhpur, people, if you go there, people will say that they have this inherent way of keeping the indoor temperatures ambient. So you walk in, and you enter into an environment which is cooler than outside. So we could have believed that, but we did not. So what we did is we went ahead and we designed a prototype which we call tiffin box, because it looks like a tiffin box, and it has an atomic sensor which records temperature and humidity, much like what Binu sir just showed us. So you walk in with the device, and it starts recording the temperature. So if you move from one room to the other, if there is a temperature drop and if there is a humidity drop, it will record. So what happened is that we went on to many such houses, and we actually thought that, we actually saw that that is happening, and we were amazed. We started asking the people, what is it? And guess what the answer was? The answer was very amazing. They said that the houses are blue, and that's why the houses are cooler. And of course, that could not have been a reason. So what we did is that we did an extensive architectural study of these kind of houses to understand what are those elements which are actually contributing to this indoor ambient temperatures. So we prepared a report, and with help of Abhiyan sir here in RDC India, we are trying to submit it to the municipal corporation as suggestions that these all elements are actually usable and can be used in the contemporary designs, because Jodhpur already has its master development plan, so might as well integrate in it. So that's the part. That was all about what I had to say, but one thing, because it came up in the discussion, is about heat stress. So this prototype that we designed, what we are doing is in the next phase of a project, not in Jodhpur, but somewhere else near to Kolkata, that is what we are trying to do, is that we will design a lot of these prototypes and we are going to hand it over to the elder women of poor households. What it will do is that it will record the humidity as well as the temperature. We'll give them a small button or small app device which they will press when they will feel uncomfortable. What generally happens is that heat stress depends on heat and humidity, and if we go on using an index which is not very local, the results will not be very conclusive. So what we will be doing is we will be selecting a locality, we'll be distributing these prototypes there, and the elderly women, they will be using it and they will be giving us the data that we need to build this threshold of when the temperature and the humidity together becomes very uncomfortable for them. So that's the next part of it, and we are working on it. And I guess that was all I had to share. I will not take much time. Open to questions, of course. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So any further question for the last two panelists? Okay, I guess not. And also we are running out of time. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. And have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
You a lot to be here. We could have discussed it in greater length, but nevertheless, we'll do it somewhere else next time.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
We have one. So, yeah. I will call out the name. Sir, if you could come, please. Thank you, sir. And now may I invite Binu sir to please.